The snow had fallen without mercy for 3 nights and 3 days, blanketing the broken corpses that ringed Winterfell's walls beneath a pall of white so clean that it belied the butchery hidden beneath. Bleak dawn struggled over the eastern ramparts, the cloud-tattered sky painted with a thin, sickly smear of rose gold. Torches guttered in the wind and hissed when spindrift lashed across the courtyard. The banners of House Baratheon, crowned stag rampant in black upon a field of gold, flapped stiffly beside those of the fiery heart of Lawler. Where once the flayed man of House Bolton had leered red and gory, now only ragged streamers remained, half-burned in the victory pyres that still smoldered at the base of the gatehouse. In the midst of that thin daylight stood Stannis Baratheon. He was bareheaded despite the biting cold, bronze hair streaked iron-gray, jaw clenched as though his teeth were set against all the winds of the north. His mailed fists were clasped behind his back, the fingers of his left hand drumming a slow, relentless tempo across the right gauntlet. Frost threaded his brows. He felt it, his cheeks burned raw, but he would not allow the cold to master him, not while any man looked on. The king must never seem weak. And he was the king, though few yet dared say it aloud. Around him the courtyard shifted like some vast, waking animal. Horses stamped and blew mist, weary Sel's-words tramped toward the great hall in search of thin ale and whatever warmth remained. Northern lords in their patched furs kept to themselves beside the ash-blackened wells where the Bolton hounds had drunk. The air smelled of charcoal and old blood, of horse sweat and burning spruce. And beyond it all, the faint, uncanny scent of winter magic, something metallic and ancient that brought an ache behind Stannis' sternum. He would not name that fear. "Your Grace," Ser Justin Massey murmured, stepping to his side. The knight's beard was rimed white, a frown dug trenches through the frost. "The men are gathering as you commanded. They await your word." "My word." Stannis' stare tracked a wagon as it rattled through the gate, piled high with broken shields, some crimson with the leaching Bolton's colors, some green with the fraying flints of the Freys. "They shall have it soon enough. Let the trumpets sound." Massey bowed and turned away, and within a moment the thin silver notes of brass drifted across the yard, echoing against the stone like distant seabirds. Men straightened, swords thumped against thighs. Davos joined the circle then, limping a little, his bad knee worsened by the cold, but his eyes shone bright as candles against the gloom. "Your Grace," Davos began, voice grave yet warm, sea salt rasp softened by something dangerously close to hope. "It is done. Maester Tybald cannot account the dead precisely, but he says the losses are less than we feared. Half the Bolton host lies beneath your boot. Ramsay Snow is slain. Winterfell is yours." "Winterfell is the North's," Stannis corrected, his tone flat as a whetstone. "I hold it for them until such time as a Stark can be seated in these halls again." Davos's smile wavered. There were no Starks to be had save one bastard on the wall and a girl lost beyond the sea. But the Onion Knight only bowed. "As you say, sire." Behind them, the stone steps that led to the godswood creaked. Melisandre descended, scarlet silks billowing like embers snatched upon a draught. Her eyes were the red of coals when she lifted them to Stannis. "The hour has come," she said, serene. "The Lord of Light has cast down his enemies and raised you up. Take your crown, Azor Ahai reborn." Davos's shoulders stiffened. Stannis' jaw flexed. He did not like the title. There was something blasphemous in men placing saviors' names upon mortal flesh, but he had learned to wield any tool placed before him. Faith, fear, steel, all were but levers. "Very well," he said. "See it done." A hush rolled through the courtyard as Melisandre passed among the rows of soldiers and banners. She carried a circlet hammered from the steel of Stannis' broken sword, Blackfire, a grim torque handed down generations of Baratheons and forged anew after his flight from Dragonstone. Its edges glimmered in the dawn. She halted at the foot of the broken weirwood gate. The tree beyond stood silent, its carved face half buried beneath drifts. Some of the northern men shifted uneasily, this crowning beneath a southern god's priestess beside the gods of their own grandfathers sat ill, but the wash of blood below these walls had made pragmatists of many. "Bend the knee," Melisandre intoned. Her breath fled in pale vapor. "Bend the knee and witness the crowning of the true king of Westeros, chosen of Lawler, the light that was promised." Stannis would not kneel, not to gods or ghosts or men. Instead, he climbed the 2 ancient steps that led onto the shattered stone dais, boots scraping frost. He turned to face the yard, blackmail gleamed beneath his furs. Silence pooled at his feet, deeper than any prayer. Even the horses quieted. Snowflakes caught in his beard like shards of glass. Melisandre raised the circlet. Sparks of crimson flared across its edge where firelight from the braziers kissed the metal. "Here," she declared, voice thrumming, "stands Stannis of House Baratheon, rightful king of the Undulls and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, protector of the realm. Let all who hear me know his light shall not be quenched." She set the crown upon his head. In that instant, the sunrise burned through a rent in the clouds, and a single blade of gold speared the courtyard, washing Stannis in brilliance. Some men fell to one knee, others crossed themselves, a few muttered prayers to the old gods. Whether miracle or chance, it did not matter. In the eyes of the host, the Lord of Light had answered. Stannis squared his shoulders, conscious of the circlet's weight. Less than steel, but heavier than dread. "Lords of the North," he called, voice carrying, "I claim this crown not for vanity, nor for the vainglory of my house, but for justice. The pretender Tommen sits the Iron Throne at his mother's whim, a boy born of incest. The Boltons who held these walls were monsters who flayed their kin. I have put them down. I will put down all who raise black banners of treachery. But hear me well, I shall keep the ancient laws. I shall honor the debts of my crown and the rights of every man. Stand with me, and I will give you peace. Defy me, and I will deliver lawful wrath." The words drifted like hoarfrost. No one cheered, not yet. But there was something fiercer than acclaim in their eyes, an ember of hard belief, born not of songs but of living through cruelty. They had watched Stannis break the Boltons in open battle while the snows came on. They had felt him share their hunger, their bitter nights. That was coin of more value in the north than the finest pledge sealed with honey tongues. Heavy footsteps crushed snow behind the press of men. Wyman Manderley waddled forward, broad and ponderous, cloak swept back to reveal a long knife belted at his hip. His cheeks were flushed with the cold, or perhaps ale, difficult to say. When he halted before the dais, he did not kneel. He said instead, "My son Wendemer lies in a cold tomb because of Lord Bolton's caprice. For that I thank you, your grace. But you speak of justice. Tell me, what justice for the babes who burn in Dragonstone's shadow?" A ripple traveled the crowd. Davos's breath hissed through his teeth. He had begged mercy for Edric Storm, and Stannis had granted it in the end, though rumors still lingered like ghosts. Melisandre's gaze found the fat lord and held, unblinking. But Stannis merely replied, "The flames have taken innocent lives, some by my hand, some by my blind folly. I do not shrink from judgment. But know this, Lord Manderley, in every choice, I weighed one life against tens of thousands, and I will weigh them still. That is a king's burden. All the same, here and now, I swear, there will be no further burnings of children in my name." The priestess stiffened. A flicker of something, anger, perhaps, or a crimson gleam of deeper passion flicked across her features, gone fast as sparks. Yet she said nothing. Wyman's eyes narrowed. He reached beneath his cloak. Steel rasped, but instead of a blade, he drew forth a strip of white cloth, stained crimson with his blood. He knelt, pressed brow to frozen earth, and bound the cloth around Stannis's boot. "Then rise, King Stannis of House Baratheon," he rumbled, breath frosting. "Winterfell welcomes you. Manderley answers your call." In the hush that followed, Great John Umber barked a laugh and stepped in beside the fat lord. He tore the great axe from his back and slammed its shaft down. "The North remembers," he bellowed. "And remembers who broke the bastard of Bolton. To hells with Lannisters and Freys, my steel rides with the king." One after another they came, Lady Barbary Dustin in sable and ash, grim as midnight, Galbart Glover, cheek-scarred, swallowing old bitterness, Lord Serwyn borne on a litter, raising a withered hand in salute. Their banners rose in the dawn wind, and the whisper built into thunder. "King! King! King!" For the first time since the fateful dawn at Storm's End, when a red woman birthed shadow and treason, Stannis Baratheon felt a pulse of something uneasy yet fierce within his ribs. Could it be triumph? He crushed it. Triumph breeds complacency. He had leagues to travel yet. That night, Winterfell's great hall roared with fire and noise. Logs the size of mast trees crackled in twin hearths. Banners hung limp in the heat. Casks of last year's apple cider were cracked open, and even the stingiest fry camp followers were allowed a cup in celebration. But beneath the salt pork scent and steaming bread, the memory of blood still lingered, faint but insistent, like old guilt. Stannis sat the high seat, though the dire wolf carved upon its backrest remained. He did not drape it with his stag. That felt wrong, somehow. The seat was not his to claim, only to steward. He kept crown on brow, though it bit at his skull. Davos sat to his right, a place once occupied by Renly, by Robert, by men who loved better than they ruled. Davos pored over ledgers even as the feast unfolded. Melisandre stood near the flames, unmoving save for the rise and fall of her chest. The warm light kissed the jewels at her throat. Her eyes did not blink. Some men leaned close and whispered that she was a statue made flesh, that her blood ran as hot as the heart of the sun. Others said she carried within her the spark of a demon. Stannis ignored tales. What mattered was her counsel, her power, unseen yet potent. When the minstrels had played the last refrain and most men drifted to benches or pallets of straw, he rose. The hall quieted. Plates stilled. "Lords," he said, voice ringing from timbered beams dark with age. "The hour is late and we are all bone-wearied, but I will speak plainly. Tomorrow we bury the dead, Bolton and Baratheon and free folk alike. The day after, we march." Murmurs fluttered like moths. Lord Glover frowned. "March, sire?" "The snows deepen and the passes close." "To where?" "South," Stannis replied. "But not to King's Landing, not yet. First we must break Moat Cailin. With the neck secure, the Freys will be forced to retreat or face our combined host in the bogs. From there we sweep to Seaguard, to Harrenhal, to the Trident's Forks. One battle upon another until Tommen's false court is left to starve behind its red walls." "The mountain clans will not join us across the neck," Barbary observed. "They will keep the Dreadfort's ashes warm and guard their own. Then they shall guard. Moat Cailin is my concern." Stannis looked to Davos. "You will command the vanguard, my friend." The Onion Knights quil stilled. "Your Grace, I am no young man and my knee will ride in a wagon if it must." Stannis allowed the faintest narrowing of eyes that might have been an attempt at humor. "I need your eyes upon the ground. I trust no other to hold the neck." Across the hall, Melisandre's red gaze bore into Davos, and Davos shifted uneasily. But he nodded. "As you command." Then Wyman Manderly, lips glistening with grease, pushed to his feet. "Your Grace, I ask leave to remain here, to tend the wounded, and there is matter of supplies. We have bread, aye, but barely enough to keep an army." His chins jiggled as he swallowed. "The Ironborn still raid along the stony shore. If they strike White Harbor..." Stannis exhaled. "Logistics, always logistics. You will stay, Lord Manderly, and marshal what grain remains. Send ravens to Tallheart's Keep for oats. Flay every fishhook and net from White Harbor's docks. Winter may be long, but we shall eat." He dismissed them then. Lords filed out beneath torchlight. The great hall dimmed, but Stannis did not retire. Instead he walked the empty corridors, Davos at his heel, until they found the rookery turret, stinking of guano and straw. Ravens croaked. The king took quill and parchment himself, dipping into ink so thick it had half frozen. He penned 2 letters. Davos watched the stroke of every word. One was to Queen Celis on Dragonstone, instructing her to make ready all ships and levies. The second was addressed to Jon Snow, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Castle Black. "My brother by vow," he muttered as he wrote. "He holds the gate of the world, and the world forgets its gate at peril." When finished, he sealed both with black wax. He did not use the crown stag, instead he pressed a 7-pointed star, symbol of the realm entire, neither Lord of Light nor Seven nor old gods. "Take them," he told Davos. "See them flown tonight." "All nights are dark this far north, your grace," Davos replied gently. Stannis' mouth twitched. "Then we shall light a brighter fire." 3 days later, the wind changed. Where once it had carried the stale musk of distant slaughter, now came a whisper of pine and something older, the cold tang of ice that had never melted. Melisandre felt it first. She stood upon the parapet at the hour before dawn, arms lifted, red hair whipping. The flames within the brazier before her burned blue-white as she breathed, and frost starred her lashes. In the fire she saw shapes, a long shadow slithering across snow, a spear of sapphire, wings of night. She turned. Stannis stood behind her, alone save for the watchful ravens perched along the mullions. His face was unreadable. "You sense it?" he asked. "I see it." Her chin inclined northward, to the wall, to the lands beyond. "The true war stirs. Every march south is a march away from the only field that matters." "You've said as much before." His voice grated like flint. Yet you saw victory here, and so I won. And so you did. Her breath steamed. But victory is ash if darkness prevails. Bring your army to the wall, or all will be lost. Stannis clasped hands behind his back. If I march north, Tommen's throne grows stronger. Tommen's throne shall crumble beneath its own rot. The lions feast upon themselves. But no man, lion nor stag, can feast if winter devours the sun. He regarded her long, until the torches flickered low. I will not abandon the realm to knights of ice, he said at last. But I will not forsake justice either. I march south, priestess, yet I will leave a garrison, and I will pledge to return. She bowed, though the movement was more ritual than reverence. Then may the Lord of Light guide your sword. Pray he forgives you when the snows fall red. Moat Cailin fell after a fortnight's siege. Stannis' lines of earthworks crept across the causeway like frozen serpents, each night crawling closer. The Ironborn garrison starved, their captain Harlan Blacktide surrendered helm and sword to Davos Seaworth beneath banners of truce. Stannis spared neither time nor coin. He hanged the reavers on pine gallows, 60 in all, and nailed their skinless corpses to the ramparts with the Bolton's own flaying knives. Justice, he called it. Mercy, some whispered, better the gallows than lawless pyres. Ravens flew. Shrewd eyes watched the king's progress. In Riverrun's towers, Blackfish veterans marked the fall of the neck. At Highgarden, Mace Tyrell puffed and blustered, doubting his spies. At Harrenhal's scorched shell, Qyburn wrote letters by flickering candlelight, his hands shaking only once when he penned the words Stannis crowned. Yet even as word spread, Winter's fist tightened. Snow piled knee-deep across the neck, drifted in the crooks of alder and birch. Wagons bogged in slush. Horses foundered. Stannis' host crawled like beetles across a white sheet, each mile costing 2. Fires consumed what meager stores they had hauled from Winterfell. Men scraped lichen from rocks to flavor porridge that tasted of rotten bark. In the king's tent, Davos scrawled grim tallies while drillmasters shrieked at hollow-cheeked footmen. When Stannis entered, frost clung to his beard. "Report," he ordered. "We've lost 40 to exposure, 28 to flux, and another dozen to wolves." Davos blew on chilled fingers. "The provisions will last another 10 days at present rates, sire. Moat Cailin cellars are bare save salted cod. They rot quick in this freeze. We must reach the twins for grain. The Freys will close their gates." "Aye," Davos agreed. "But the Blackfish holds Riverrun. If we turn east along the Green Fork..." No, Stannis' reply was iron. "We march for the Trident. The realm will see the rightful king stride beneath banners red with blood, and they will flock. They will starve too," Davos muttered, too quiet for any but the king to hear. Yet Stannis heard, he always heard. "It matters not," Stannis said, and in his eyes burned a relentless purpose that swallowed doubt. "If winter kills 1,000, I will bury winter. If it kills 10,000, I will bury winter still. This is the cost of crowns." He returned to the night like a wraith, leaving Davos alone with despair and ink that froze in its well. The north, however, does not yield lightly even to kings. On the 5th night beyond the neck, the blizzard struck. Wind screaming like a woman in labor, snow slashing sideways, drifts rising taller than horses' shoulders. The army scattered into makeshift camps amidst willows and half-frozen bogs. Fires died in gusts. Tents collapsed beneath ice. Stannis stalked from ember to ember, cape-flapping, ordering men to huddle, to share blankets, to carve trenches to shield against the gale. He found a boy from House Dustin, no more than 15 summers, shivering against a dead mule. The lad's lips were blue, his sword hand bled where frostbite had cracked the skin. Stannis stripped his own fur cloak and threw it over the boy's shoulders. "Hold fast," he hissed through chattering teeth. "Dawn always comes." For 2 days the storm raged, and in the whiteout time surrendered all meaning. When at last the wind faltered, 33 corpses lay stiff beneath blankets of snow. But among the living, something else had emerged, a hard, wordless devotion. Men spoke of the king who walked the lines each hour, dragging fallen sea squires from drifts, barking orders that saved fires. They spoke of a crown rimed in ice, eyes burning like banked coals. It was not love they felt. Stannis did not inspire love, but something harsher, deeper. the faith given to a man who would endure any misery alongside them and demand the same. In the frozen dark, such faith was worth more than warmth. When they moved again, they moved as one. Atop the wall, Jon Snow read the raven's letter beneath his chamber's single rushlight. The wax seal had see. Racked in flight, the parchment was stained with melted snow. Davos's steady hand named Stannis king, claimed Winterfell's triumph, begged the Watch's aid. Jon's mouth set in a thin line. He had pledged his life to neutrality, the Watch meddled in no king's wars. Yet the other threat still loomed, and Stannis was the only crowned head who truly believed it. And there, penned in the margin by Davos' careful script, he keeps his word. He will come, but the snow is merciless. Send aid and win the realm a future. Jon lowered the letter. Ghost lay at his feet, red eyes glimmering. Far above, the bell tolled once an alarm. The wind beyond the ice carried a distant echo, fear. He donned his cloak. High above the muddy lanes of King's Landing, Cersei Lannister wrapped herself in sable and stared out from the Tower of the Hand toward the harbor where the Blackwater whispered. Torches shimmered upon the water, ships' masts swayed like skeletal fingers. Soft footsteps announced Qyburn. Your Grace, he murmured, the ravens speak of Stannis crowned. Cersei's nails dug half-moons into her palms. I have heard. The High Septon presses for your son to seek peace. Peace? She laughed, a brittle chime. Stannis wants no peace, only submission. He will burn my boy alive if that Red Witch commands. Qyburn inclined his head. Then we must make ready. The Tyrell armies march from Highgarden, yet they are slow and soft. Mayhaps you have another weapon in mind? Cersei's gaze drifted across the parapets where barrels of wildfire rested beneath oiled cloth. Yes, she whispered. I have fire enough to break any king. She touched her belly, still flat beneath silk, yet she imagined a child stirring. My trueborn son, she thought. He will avenge us all. In White Harbor, Wyman Manderley knelt in candlelight before the statue of the stranger, counting debts owed and sins forgiven. Around him, the mother's temple echoed with the hush of prayer. Behind the windows the tide whispered. If the king fails, he breathed, the north falls. If we deny him grain, our sons starve. Yet if we aid him and lose, the lions will mount our heads upon spikes. A voice stepped from shadow. Then we must see to it that he does not lose. Lady Willa Manderley, slim as a spear, emerged. She wore no jewels save a dagger at her belt streaked with the leaping trout of her mother's bloodline. The Freys share none of father's doubts. They drown in ale in the twins, fat on southern coin. Meanwhile your people cough blood and beg for bread. Sell the grain, I sell it to your king. But keep half for White Harbor, and hold the ships hostage for his return. Her father sighed. You would barter with a Baratheon? I would barter with every devil in the seven hells to see our banners fly free beneath a wolf once more. She unlaced her dagger and laid it across his folded hands. Blood marked its edge, dark and sticky. She had taken it from a Fry courier found lurking near the docks. His corpse waited with iron hooks on the harbor floor. The North remembers, she said, as though to a ghost. It remembers the Red Wedding. Wyman closed his fingers around the dagger. The metal was still warm, and so the long march wound on. Weeks blurred to months. Storms hammered the host. Mountain passes sealed behind avalanches. Yet with every league, Stannis' legend grew, whispered by crofters in cold hamlets, by hedge knights nursing boils before dung fires. A king who shared his soldiers' hardships, who judged with iron fairness, who brooked no flattery. A king who forgave no crime. Some tales painted him breathing blue lightning, felling 50 foes with one blow. Others had him as tall as Hodder, strength of 10 men. None were true, but truth is seldom required of legends. At the Trident's banks, Stannis met the Fry host under banners of parley. Hosteen Fry, jowls quivering, demanded the king bend knee to Tommen and return to Dragonstone. Stannis replied by unrolling a parchment where High Septon's own seal proclaimed Joffrey a bastard and Tommen likewise. Fry spat oaths. Stannis gave him a night to consider. By dawn the Freys had fled, half their men deserting to the king's camp. Better a freezing stomach than a noose reserved for oathbreakers. South of Harrenhal, word reached them that Mace Tyrell's vanguard had reached Maidenpool, but winter storms had scattered much of his baggage train. The Reachmen feasted on onions and rat meat, morale withered. Stannis smiled at that. Winter is an ally who cannot march but chokes enemy throats all the same. Yet each triumph bore a cost. Davos's cough worsened until he spat blood. Lord Glover's eldest was slain by brigands while foraging for turnips. Hundreds deserted when the snows reached their waists. Stannis said nothing, but at night he paced his tent, steps carving grooves into frozen earth. He saw it in his dreams, a heart of ice pulsing beneath the wall, every beat echoing across snowfields, summoning the dead. He woke drenched in sweat, crown heavy upon the chest beside his cot, half wondering if the Red Woman's god now whispered to him as well. Melisandre read the fear behind his eyes and stoked it. "Turn north," she whispered as torches cast scarlet halos around her. "The darkness gathers. Your sword alone may break it." Stannis' lips pressed thin. "My sword is needed here. Will you rule a kingdom of corpses?" "I will rule and I will defend. I cannot defend if I abdicate my claim." She smiled, and there was both sorrow and certainty in that smile, an acknowledgement of stubborn flesh against implacable prophecy. "As you will, your grace. But know the longer you tarry, the higher the cost paid in blood and frost." He said nothing more, but the next dawn he ordered Ser Justin Massey and 200 chevaliers to ride north, carrying wagons of grain and salted meat. "Go to the wall," he commanded. "Swear oath that I, Stannis Baratheon, shall return before the new moon. Tell Jon Snow he is not alone." Massey bowed low. When he rode out beneath morning's shroud, his breath hung like ghost fire. In the Aerys' icy halls, Sansa Stark sat beside a dying brazier while sweet Robin dozed upon her lap. Letters came each day, thin and trembling, from some fast friend of Littlefinger's, detailing Stannis' campaign, the fall of Moat Cailin, the crowning at Winterfell, the forging of a northern alliance. She read them in silence, lips moving on names she had once known only in songs: Umber, Manderley, Glover. Each mention of Winterfell carved a hollow under her ribs. She ached to be there, to walk the godwood, to smell pine smoke and sap. When the boy lord stirred, she smoothed his hair and whispered tales of giants striding in the vale, of knights who walked on water. But her thoughts wandered ever north. Stannis fought for the realm, some said. Others named him Butcher. She wondered which he truly was. When a raven came from White Harbor begging for Stark to return, she read it thrice, heart-hammering. Could she trust this Baratheon? Or was he another player in a game she could never win? Elaine, she reminded herself, but the name felt brittle as first ice. Sansa Stark lives still, and Winterfell needs her. In Dorne, Prince Doran received news of Stannis' advance with pursed lips and slow nod. "The game shifts," he whispered to Ariohoda, who stood sentinel with long axe gleaming like moonlight. "Cersei will send her armies hither to hold the Stormlands. The Reach bleeds in the snow. Perhaps the vipers may strike while the stags and lions lock horns." Areo offered no counsel. He was guard, not counselor. Yet his dark eyes flicked to firelight where the sand snakes sparred. War always births war, the unspoken truth. Dorne had waited 17 years for vengeance, but patience, too, can starve. The first battle of the Green Fork ended before it truly began. Tyrell outriders, frost-fevered and half-starved, charged Stannis' spearmen across crusted snow, hoping to break the center. Instead, they shattered like glass upon stone, their mounts skidded and crashed. Lord Garland Tyrell, brave and foolish in equal measure, was captured, his fine cloak sodden and torn. Stannis offered bread and salt, but the young lord refused all comfort save a priest's murmured blessing. Later, under Davos's watch, Garland penned a letter to Highgarden urging restraint. It flew via Raven north into winds cold enough to shatter wings. Whether it reached his father, none could say. The second battle, fought a fortnight later near Lord Harroway's town, was bloodier. Rosemen fought through waist-deep drifts that drowned their tulip-bright banners. Melisandre stood upon a hillock, hair aflame, and called upon the Lord of Light. Some swore they saw a great shadow shape, antlered and immense, walk the snows. Others claimed arrows turned to ash midair. Whatever truth, when the snow settled, the Tyrell host lay broken. Stannis lost 500 men, but Mace lost thrice. Yet each victory tightened Tommen's crown upon Cersei's brow. In the throne room, the Queen Regent offered gold to any Sells word company still intact. The Golden Company weighed offers, the Second Sons debated. Meanwhile, Qyburn loosed whispers of black sorcery and dead men rising in the north, rumors meant to chill hearts more surely than winter. Fear is a blade with many edges. Night fell like an ink spill. Stannis held counsel beneath torn canvas while wind worried the seams. Davos coughed, eyes sunken. Glover's knuckles were cracked and bleeding. Only Melisandre seemed untouched by cold, though frost rimed the rubies at her neck. 10,000 remain fit to march, Davos reported. Supplies scant beyond another month. His voice rasped like parchment. Tyrell's retreat to Bitterbridge, Glover added. But reports say Ser Kevin Lannister musters at Harrenhal with 20,000. If they join, Stannis silenced him with a lifted hand. Kevin will hesitate. He is no fool, and he knows Tommen's birth a lie. Questions gnaw at him. He traced the map's rivers with gloved fingers. We strike southwest at Maidenpool. Take the port before Lannister claws can clutch it. From there, ships bring grain from Gulltown and Lys. It is bold, Davos admitted. It is necessary. Stannis lifted eyes, and all counselors felt the weight of that gaze. If winter devours men, we swallow winter. If darkness comes, we bear torches. Justice is not a dream to be chased upon fair days. It is a fortress built in foul ones. We shall build it, stone by bloody stone. They bowed each in their fashion. Outside, the wind came through firs like a child left in snow. Far away, beyond the wall, a horn sounded thrice in the dead of night. Jon Snow clutched Longclaw and stepped onto an ice rampart slick with freezing sleet. Blue lights flickered in tree-lean shadows. The dead were on the move, stirred by some new summons. Their eyes glowed like stars never seen in living skies. Jon's breath plumed. He thought of a crown of black steel and a promise to return, and he prayed to every god for dawn's delay. Weeks later, as Stannis' shivering scouts reached the outskirts of Maidenpool, ravens overtook them, thin, ragged birds bearing Jon Snow's desperate plea. The wall was under assault. Wildlings turned watchers, the dead breached gates. Lightning blue corpses walked. The true war had begun. Stannis read the message thrice. He paced beneath the battered stag banner, boots crunching crusted ice. At last he called for Davos. "Send word," he commanded. "We retreat." "Retreat?" Davos blinked. "Your Grace, we are within sight of victory." "Victory over whom? Tyrells? Lannisters?" His laugh was sharp, hollow. "Children squabbling with sticks while giants stride the earth. The realm will not thank the king who claimed a throne of corpses. But the men will follow me where I lead." Stannis' eyes shone with something fierce and unyielding. "And I lead north." He looked to the storm-ridden sky, crown glinting with hoarfrost. "Fire must meet ice," he murmured as though reciting a prophecy half-remembered. "Else all is ash." Thus began the long march back. Southerns cursed and desertions multiplied, but northern lords tightened ranks. The king who had come south to claim a throne now burned his banners to feed fires that kept his men alive. Along the King's Road, hungry common folk lined ditches, begging food. Stannis ordered half his stores spent on them, though his own soldiers went without. "A king's duty," he said to Davos when questioned. "If they die, what realm remains to crown?" Word reached King's Landing like wildfire in dry reeds. Stannis retreats. Cersei exulted, thinking him broken. She sent ravens to Bravos seeking loans, set spies at every inn north of the Trident. But no tale that came south spoke of rout or collapse, only of a king marching into deeper snows, of soldiers who trod behind their liege with lanterns held high, singing rough songs of hearth and home that beat back the dark. Even foes felt some pride in that tale. Few march willingly toward death. Fewer still do so for justice. On the 15th night of the new march, Melisandre climbed a ridge overlooking white fields that shimmered beneath the aurora's ghostly fires. She knelt, palms open to the stars. Heat pulsed through her blood. The ruby at her throat flashed. She saw visions. Wings made of glass, a boy with a wolf's shadow, a weirwood's face weeping black sap. But above all she saw the king, bathed in scarlet flame, sword of living fire in his hand, facing shadows whose eyes burned cold. She smiled, faint and distant, for prophecy's wheels turned again. They always turned, crushing hopes beneath them, birthing salvation in the cracks. Behind her, Stannis approached, boots crunching. He halted at her side. "Tell me what you see." "Purpose," she answered. "Doom. Salvation. All intertwined. Riddles. Truths that have yet to choose a shape." He grunted. "Then let us carve shape from snow and blood." She rose. "So we shall, your grace." And together they descended into the night, where 1,000 torches flickered along the line of march, human stars against the void, moving inexorably toward the wall, toward fate, toward a reckoning written in the bone of the world long before crowns were forged or kings took names. Above them, the aurora shimmered in curtains of emerald and violet, painting the snow light enough to walk without lanterns. It looked for that heartbeat like dawn. Yet dawn was far off and winter's teeth were sharp. But the king walked on, and behind him marched an idea stronger than any throne, that justice, once set ablaze, might warm even the coldest night. The snow swallowed their tracks, one by one, yet the banners kept inching north. Stag and fiery heart, dire wolf reclaimed by frost-hardened hands, trident and flayed man captured and inverted. And somewhere far beyond the lonely lights of mortal fires, ice cracked like thunder, and an ancient darkness stirred. The march had only just begun. The king's northward march began beneath a bruised sky, the first flakes drifting slow and silent as penance. They clung to helms and lashes, melted and froze again, weaving frost threads through beards and braids until every man seemed carved of marble. Trumpets sounded only at dawn and dusk, brief, mournful notes, and between them reigned the hush of winter's long breath, hooves muffled, wagon wheels groaning, banners cracking like old bones. The green fork lay behind them now, iced into stillness. Before them stretched leagues of bleak meadow, each mile narrowed by drifts that swallowed knees, then waists, then whole horses if a rider misjudged the crust. Stannis rode at the fore on a rangy courser the color of soot, its ribs showing despite the best grain. Each evening he rubbed the beast's legs himself, muttering that a king who let his mount founder deserved to walk. Davos paced in a curtained wagon close behind, coughing black phlegm into a rag and studying the store's ledger by lantern light. He counted until numbers blurred, then counted again, always reaching the same thin sum. When he slept, parchment ghosts bled through his dreams. Columns of dwindling oats, casks scraped to the stave, men's names struck through in neat charcoal lines. They reached the ruins of the village called Oxcross on the fifth night, its charred timbers thrusting from snow like broken ribs. Ravens perched on the blackened smithy roof, feathers puffed against the wind. A stray dog padded circles round the well, whimper-thin, fur hanging in icicles. Stannis ordered the carcass of a fallen draft horse quartered and cooked to feed both dog and men. The animal's blood steamed where it spilled across frozen hearthstones, the smell of iron and smoke mingled with pine, reminding soldiers of kitchens long since buried beneath ash. Some wept, others chewed in silence, jaws slow, eyes far. When fires guttered low, Stannis convened council in the shell of the sept, roof gone, stars glaring through ribs of char. Melisandre stood between the altar's cracked halves, her shadow dancing red upon scorched marble. Provisions will last 10 days, Davos rasped. The storms lengthen each march watch. Scouts report drifts 6 feet deep in the dread Fort Lowlands. 6 feet can be split by shovel, Stannis replied, voice a flint's edge. What of Jon Snow? No new ravens, sire. The bird that brought his plea died in the rookery, too weary to roost. A sign, Melisandre murmured, warm breath fogging. The old powers stir. Even the servants of the sky tremble. Stannis ignored her. We make White Harbor in 8 days. Lord Manderley holds grain. A flicker of something wry amusement touched the corners of his mouth. He will sell it thrice the price, no doubt. If the harbor itself still stands, Lord Glover cautioned. His face was hollowed since the trident, cheeks cut with windburn. Ireborn prowl the bite. Torgon Greyjoy sacked Flint's finger last moon turn. Let him sack, Stannis said. Stone cannot burn twice. We sail upriver from the harbor, follow the white knife to Long Lake. Wagons meet us at Widow's Watch. Ships? Davos wheezed. In this freeze, with half the Mander iced? Masts snap like reeds. Stannis's gaze never wavered. We do not need all ships. One will carry enough salted cod to keep the host alive. The rest march inland along the King's Road. And if the others sweep south before we reach them? It was Massey who spoke, helm tucked beneath arm as though shielding a child from storms. We will be scattered piecemeal between river and shore. Then we scatter with purpose, Stannis declared. Detachments of 20 at half-league intervals. If one is overrun, flares warn the next. Fire is our phalanx now. Melisandre smiled. The king at last heeds the lessons of flame. No. The king heeds the lessons of war, Stannis answered, and in the convulsion of torchlight his crown sparked, each point glimmering scarlet. 3 days later, sky and earth fused in a white abyss. Wind scoured faces raw, words froze between lips and fell unheard. Davos ordered canvas shields lashed to wagon sides, turning them into lumbering tortoises that crawled in lockstep. Archers marched within, fletchings tucked beneath armpits to keep goose down dry. By dusk the forward vanguard found the king's horse standing alone beneath a snow-packed birch, reins trailing. Stannis was ahead in the gloom, hacking at drifts chest-high with his sword, no royal blade of Valyrian splendor now, only battered castle steel honed so thin the edge rang each time it bit the crust. Massey dismounted and slogged through knee-deep powder. Sire, the men. Dig, Stannis, see you. Tien. The road lies here, under a man's depth of snow. Roads gone, your grace. Wind carved new valleys. Massey's voice cracked from cold. We head west and circle the ridge. Less drift there. Stannis paused, exhaled frost. West costs half a day. Half a day costs lives. He thrust his sword again. Here. Massey obeyed, swinging a wood axe borrowed off a carter. Others joined, until axe heads rang a church bell rhythm across the trough. When at last the buried stones of the King's Road showed, a glimmer of gray cobble beneath moonlight, the host roared, a low, ragged cheer that warmed chests better than mead. They slept in shifts while snow kept falling. Yet when dawn bled gold along the rim of clouds, the path was clear. A straight, narrow vein of stone running northward like destiny. That morning Davos found the king seated upon a toppled milestone, gnawing a heel of stale bread. He offered the remainder to a passing Celspear who looked scarcely older than Shireen had been. The boy's eyes widened and he knelt, cradling the crust as though it were rubies. "Mercy forges loyalty," Davos said when the lad hurried off. "Mercy loans loyalty," Stannis corrected. "Payment comes when battles call." His gaze drifted east where the sea would lie, hidden beyond leagues of forest. For a beat Davos recognized the shore-born hunger in that stare, a man who smelled salt on wind even beneath snow. "You wish for ships, your grace. I wish for tools enough to win." Stannis' jaw worked. "I've too few, and winter steals one each breath." Davos coughed. "Perhaps winter steals from Tommen too. Tommen has the reach." A bleak smile. "That mace suffers hunger as a drunk suffers thirst, loudly but never long. He will break bread while my men chew bark. Not if he faces dread of ice." Stannis' brows drew. "Rumors break easier than spears." Davos leaned on his cane. "Yet men fear what they do not see until it stands a door. If the wall falls, every hearth south will feel its shadow. Even mace." Stannis studied the wisping breath between them as though weighing each tendril on iron scales. "Let us see the wall still standing first." He rose, brushed snow off greaves, and strode into the dawn glare. That same dawn, Jon Snow stood atop the wall's eastmost tower, cloak flapping like torn banners. The air smelled of old ice and pine fire, the horizon shimmered with curtains of aurora that whispered of deep magic, both promise and threat. Below, Castle Black swarmed, ravens launching, grooms leading shaggy garrons, stewards rolling casks of pitch toward the stone-sided stairs. 200 wildlings milled by the old shield hall, some in patched furs, others bare-armed despite cold, brandishing bronze spears gone green. They watched the Night's Watch train, black cloaks snapping as lads drilled in spinning arcs around defensive fires. Tormund Giantsbane clomped up beside Jon, beard lacquered with frost. "Letters fly," he rumbled, jerking thumb skyward. "More birds these last hours than crows on a corpse. What news so urgent it needs feathers and quills instead of steel?" "Stannis marches home," Jon murmured. "Home?" Tormund barked a laugh. "Thought Dragonstone was home to that one. He's a king. The realm is his home and his burden. King o' ruined hearts, perhaps." Tormund spat over the edge, phlegm freezing before it hit foot. "Will he come?" Jon's knuckles tightened on rampart stone. "He will." Tormund eyed him, something like pity softening craggy brow. "And if he don't? Then we stand alone." Jon shifted, rolling shoulders stiff from bandaged cuts. "But we have stood alone before." "Aye, Lord Crow." Giantsbane thumped Jon's back. "Best hope we still stand when your king strolls up. Night's cold bites deeper than a Lannister's dagger." Below, horn blasts boomed too, and men scurried, faces lifting toward the gap in the wall's shadow where tunnel gates groaned. Jon's breath caught. 2 blasts for riders returning, not foes, yet each signal still knifed his gut after months of dread. Riders clattered through, ragged, horses lathered. They bore a flag, a stag within flames, edges torn by wind. Jon exhaled slow. Not Stannis but his outriders, at least. Hope trimmed its sails on such scraps. In the council chamber, ravens croaked from lintels as Jon read the missive, Massey's crisp hand detailing distances, rations, casualties, the promise of arrival by first quarter moon. Many numbers, one pledge the king keeps faith. Jon handed paper to Bowen Marsh. Marsh grunted. "They come with 200 wagons and 500 men. They'll eat us bare inside a fortnight. Better hungry than dead." "Or worse than dead," Melisandre whispered, stepping from alcove gloom. Flame danced in her eyes as though reflection of some unseen pyre. "The dead are not the enemy. The shadows that move them are. Slay the shadow and corpses fall." Bowen snorted. Easy words from lips that never faced a white. The red woman's smile gleamed. "I have faced far darker things than walking ice, Lord Stewart." "Enough." Jon folded the message. "Rally the builders. Sure every breach." Gather oil, cloth, pitch. The king comes, and with him, winter's answer. White Harbor rose from morning mist like a dream half-remembered. Gray walls bristled with spear spires, gulls keened over patchwork roofs dusted white. Yet the harbor itself gaped empty, no merchant cogs, no ringing hammer of shipwrights, only cracked ice pans drifting between piers. Atop the sea tower's light, the merman banner drooped sodden, its silk tail frozen to stone. A trumpet hailed the king as Stannis' column emerged from birchwoods. Manderley's guards, fat men in padded cloaks, watched wide-eyed as knights of the queen's men trudged past, armor streaked with salt from sweat that froze and thawed in endless cycle. The city gates creaked open. Within, townsfolk lined muddy lanes clutching lanterns, hoods pulled low. Some bowed, others crossed arms, wary. Lord Wyman did not meet them at the gate. Instead, a litter arrived before the king's pavilion at dusk, borne by 4 retainers who sweated beneath layers of wool despite the chill. Out stepped Willa Manderley, cheeks chapped crimson yet jaw set like iron. Lord Manderley has taken to bed with a fever, she said, voice carrying over crackling braziers. I come in his stead. Stannis eyed her. Fever of flesh or of caution? The body governs the mind, your grace. One cannot command with lungs full of phlegm. She extended a scroll. Wax bore White Harbor's leaping silver merman. Terms of grain sale. 2,000 bushels white oats, 3,000 barley, smoked cod sufficient for 10 weeks. Price: 20 stag a bushel. Gasps rippled among northern lords, even Davos swayed, eyes glinting. Stannis' face remained stone. 10, 17, 15, he said, calm as snowfall. And for each 100 bushels, the harbor provides 1 bowyer, 1 smith, and 3 wheelwrights to join march north. They return when war ends. Willa considered. Flamelight etched resolve across youth's soft features. Done. Davos exhaled a breath he had not known he held. But Stannis added, I require use of the Lady Lyanna. The Lady Lyanna was Manderley's swiftest galley, sleek and slender, often hired by couriers from Winterfell. Willa's brow arched. She lies moored beneath ice thicker than a maid's virtue in a September. Break it. You may claim the galley, sire, but not her crew. White Harbor needs every hand. My men will crew. Stannis' eyes never wavered. Lyanna sails upriver tonight with cod and oats enough to feed Castle Black. The waterways freeze heavier each day. Tomorrow may close them. Willa hesitated, then bowed low. As you will, your grace. The dock master will free her by moonrise. Later, in the privacy of the pavilion, Davos confronted his king. We risk half our stores on currents clogged with ice. We risk all if the wall falls, Stannis replied. This is a wager against annihilation. Davos's cough rattled like loose nails. I shall command the Lyanna then. Lawler knows sailors better than lords. Stannis' gaze softened fractionally. You can scarcely stand. I can sit a quarterdeck. Davos's mouth cracked in a grin. And I've steered through worse waters than frozen rivers. Stannis clasped the smuggler's shoulder. Then go. If the currents take you, make sure they choke on your bones before they swallow the grain. The Lady Lyanna slid from her berth at midnight, hull-scraping troughs carved by sledgehammers. Torches lined the pier, sparks flew where pickaxes shattered ice. Sailors hauled tar-soaked blankets to wrap the mast so it would not crack, and the prow smashed through crust like a spearhead. Davos stood astern wrapped in sealskin, hand on tiller, eyes tracking the sluggish pull of tide beneath glaze. Behind him in the hold, casks of oats rattled, bound by netting. Above, 2 Bravosi deckhands hummed dirges to ward against river ghosts. By dawn they reached the White Knife's first bend, where spruce pressed thick to banks. Snow began again, heavy, wet, blinding. The sails iced stiff, men crawled along yards beating them with wooden mallets so frozen sheets might catch wind. Davos spat flakes, tasted copper from cracked lip, and cursed softly in low Valyrian, a prayer he'd learned beneath Dragonstone's wharf as a boy. They skirted shoals, dodged flows big as market stalls, until the river narrowed between limestone bluffs. Here current quickened, ripping under the keel. Ice cracked, roared, and calved away in splinters. The Lyanna careened, listing hard. A cask broke free, slammed against bulkhead with a thud like a drum. Crew shouted. Davos bellowed orders, voice high as gull cry. Oars plunged, straining. The galley righted, grinding through flows. Nightfall found them moored against a gravel spit beneath bent pines where wolves howled. Davos walked decks, fingers brushing frozen rails, counting losses. 1 cask gone, splintered and devoured by water. 3 deckhands lost to river's maw, rope trailing from waist where rescuers failed. He whispered their names to the dark, then turned aft to scribble figures in log. 3 less mouths to feed, 1 more sorrow to carry. Next day the river widened into Long Lake, glassy and gray. Ice sheeted its mirror in veins that snapped like thunder when the bow breached. The galley crept, crew pushing floes aside with poles as thick as children's bodies. Overhead, the sky cleared, blue so deep it looked black-framed snow peaks sharp as cleavers. Sun glittered. Every crystal reflected 1,000 fires. It was beautiful, terrible, awe that swallowed breath. On the lake's far northern shore, a watchtower jutted marsh yard manned by 10 black brothers. Smoke coiled from chimney, ravens circled. A horn sounded once, greeting. Davos smiled, though the act cracked scabs on his cheeks. He guided the Lady Lyanna toward shallow jetty where men in sable cloaks waited to lash ropes, cheering as they pulled. "You've come through hell," one crow marveled. "Hell has colder soup," Davos croaked. Meanwhile Stannis led the bulk west around the lake, through pines whose limbs sagged under white loads like old shoulders under centuries of memory. They marched by night to spare horses the glare of noonbright snow, sleeping in clearing forts encircled by sharpened stakes hacked from young spruce. Fires burned in trenches lined with granite to hide light. Above, Aurora wove pale ribbons. On the 8th night, the forward scouts sighted 3 white shapes gliding across frozen wetlands, wraiths tall as giants, with eyes blue and bright as desert noon. No horns sounded, only the hush and crunch as watchers pressed to earth, holding breath. The others drifted between sedges as though sniffing a scent lost on mortal wind. In their wake, snow hissed, swirling where unseen feet passed. When they vanished into black stands of pine, scouts collapsed to knees, one weeping silent tears that froze before they fell. Stannis heard their tale at dawn, face expressionless. "They test our border," he said, "as wolves test herd walls." "How shall we answer?" asked Lord Glover. "With iron and faith." He turned to Melisandre. "Can your god's fire ward the host?" "The Lord's light burns all shadows," she replied. "Yet what is needed for flame? Each soldier must bear torch and oil. The blaze of 10,000 souls will make night recoil. See it done." Men spent that day felling elder spruce, twisting birch bark into torches, filling clay pots with lamp oil drawn from wagons. The smell hung thick, sharp, bitter. Some soldiers daubed tar across shields in rough sigils, stags ablaze, wolves crowned with flame. Superstition, perhaps, yet such symbols lent steel to spines. When torches were lit at dusk, the forest glowed an angry crimson, trees writhing and flicker like legion of demons at prayer. That very night, the White Walkers returned. No horn heralded them, no cry but the crack of sudden cold as warmth fled the air. Flames guttered blue, shrinking. Frost spidered across spear points. Then came shapes luminous, spectral, 3 again, then 5, then a dozen floating out between bowls. Snow hissed beneath their steps. Swords gleamed, slender crystal blades gleaming with pale inner light, sharper than memory of summer. Beside them strode dead men, scores, skin slack, ice-twin hell lamps of azure. Armor of every realm's coin clattered on blackened ribs. Stark mail, umber fur, a reachman's rose once crimson now shriveled. Stannis gripped his longsword, voice booming. "Form." Ranks closed round him, torches raised. Fire met ice, they hissed where heat touched frost, sending up plumes of steam that curled into whirling ghosts. Arrows loosed from rear lines shattered on glass swords or lodged useless in rotting flesh. Where flame flicked high, whites shrank back, flesh igniting to burst in showers of sparks. Yet others advanced unhurt, frost trailing like cloaks. One strode toward the king with languid grace. Its eyes reflected torch fire and pinpoints. When it raised its blade, the steel sang, a note thin and cruel as a spider's laugh. Stannis met that strike, his ordinary sword clanged against ice, edge chipping. Shock jolted through his arm, near numbing. He stepped back, parried again. Each clash chipped metal, shards fell smoking as though burning from within. Melisandre's voice rang from the slope above, chanting syllables that twisted air. The ruby at her throat blazed, casting red aura. Suddenly torches flared brighter, jets of orange roaring skyward. Flame leapt along wooden stakes, sending sparks like fiery hail. The other turned, crystalline face catching crimson glow. For a heartbeat it hesitated, just enough. Stannis lunged, burying chipped steel in its chest where ribs would lie. Blade cracked, but as iron kissed ice the creature burst apart, shattering in a bloom of rime, dust swirling on wind. Cheers broke with terror's edge. More foes pressed. Ser Godry Faring swung a torch like mace, caving skull of white who gnashed rotten teeth. Massey drove spear through skeleton ribs. Bone exploded in frost shards. But where an other's blade sheared, men died, flesh freezing instant, skin paling before shatter. Stannis fought through rings of enemies, torch in left hand now, broken sword no more than dagger length in right. He burned dead men, kicked shards, bellowed orders. At his back he felt Melisandre's heat, a wall of sung words and living fire. When last of the others turned to retreat, two whites trapped behind still clawed forward, frozen tongues hissing. Torches met them, they crumpled, smoldering. Silence followed, broken only by panting and crackle of renewed flames devouring sap-rich pine. Snow melted in black puddles around corpses that smelt of ruin. Men looked to their king, half expecting him to crumble as blade had. But Stannis stood, crown frosted, torch lifted. "They bleed," he shouted. No blood had spilled from other, yet the metaphor rang. Soldiers howled back. Victory, though small, flickered hope bright in hollow chests. Next morning casualties were tallied, 31 dead, 42 wounded, 3 lost to cold after. But among the dead lay 2 others, scattered like brittle glass. Their swords were collected, unmelted, still keen. Stannis ordered them bound in lambspun cloth, handled with tongs. "Send to Castle Black," he told a courier. Proof. At Castle Black, Jon paced the Lord Commander's solar reading the courier's parchment. Torchlight guttered, yet his face glowed with a fierce kinship. He turned to Dolorous Ed. "Two slain," he said, reverent. "Men can kill them." "Men with red witches behind," Ed muttered. "Wouldn't mind one of those at my back, might warm my bed." Jon ignored the jest. "Rally every able ranger. We ride to meet the king, guide him through the haunted forest." "Lovely," Ed sighed. "First watch, now escort. Next we'll knit him socks." Jon's mouth twitched. "Pack socks too. Frostbite knows no crowns." The converging columns met at Mole's Town, ghostly ruins mounded under snow where once ale had flowed and laughter rattled thin walls. Now only husks remained, half-eaten by fire from some reckless deserter months past. Smoke of Stannis' torches heralded arrival. Jon's rangers signaled back with horn and mirrored steel. When the king rode up, Jon bowed, though he disliked bending knee on black ice. Stannis dismounted stiff-legged, ice sunken yet ablaze. "You kept faith," Jon said. "As did you." The king clasped gloved forearm, callous grip still strong. Jon's gaze flicked to shattered ice blades strapped across a pack mule. "We have Valyrian steel," he offered, "and dragonglass. I have stubbornness," Stannis cut. "Forged hotter than dragonstone." The faintest smile, a crack in granite, ghosted his lips. "But steel will help." There was scant time for greetings. Scouts reported movement beyond the tree line, thrumming like distant thunder. Jon ordered trenches dug, palisades raised using timbers from Mole's Town's broken studs. Wildlings joined crows side by side, hacking, dragging, cursing. Giant's Bane roared his laugh at black brothers who once sneered, now they passed him spades with grins tight as drumskins. Davos arrived the following dusk with the Lady Lioness grain. He limped up from tunnel mouth leaning on a deckhand's shoulder, salt still crusting hair. When Jon greeted him, the Onion Knight tipped fur-lined cap. "Brought you breakfast, M-Lord, and lost a few good souls buying it." Jon clasped his arm. "Their sacrifice feeds thousands. And thousands more will need feeding come dawn," Davos replied, ice shadowed. Within the wall's courtyard, kettles boiled oats into thick gruel tinged with cod. The smell drew half-frozen boys from ramparts. Samwell Tarly wept to taste fish again, though the brine burned cracked lips. That night, battle drums echoed off ice as torches lit the whole face of the wall, miles wide. Flame columns climbed ropes to cressets anchored on battlements so high they flickered amidst stars. Stannis walked the ramparts in silence, daunted by height yet unbending. He stared north across forest where pale lights danced beneath aurora like ghosts in masquerade. Melisandre joined him. "The moment nears." "I feel it," he admitted. "Then claim your birthright." She drew a leather-wrapped hilt from beneath cloak. The ancestral Baratheon blade reforged, half-sword, half-torch, a glowing orange at fuller. "Lightbringer." Stannis closed fingers around grip. The metal warmed, pulsing faint like heartbeat. But he heard echoes of Edric Storm's cries, of children on pyres, of Davos's pee. "Lees." His jaw clenched. "Not yet," he whispered, returning the sword. "True light cannot be forged on lies." Melisandre's smile did not break. "Truth is what flame reveals. All else is shadow." Stannis turned away. "I will wield steel when dawn demands it. Until then, keep your embers." Dawn came without sun, a pale candle behind storm-sheared clouds. And with it, the army of death. They emerged from forest in ranks unending, whites by the thousands, whites of bear and elk, of wildling and night's watch, eye flames burning azure. Behind them glided figures tall and cruel, armored in ice plates etched with runes that sang discordant notes when wind slipped through. Swords beat shields of frozen crystal, and the sound traveled like cracking glaciers, felt more than heard, a vibration inside bones. On Wall's summit, archers notched dragonglass-dipped arrows. Jon paced lines, longclaw in fist, its pale Valyrian steel shimmering. Beside him Tormund hefted a salvaged great axe blackened with pitch. They exchanged nods, no words left unsaid. Stannis commanded ground defense beneath, in front of gate, infantry arrayed behind spiked trenches soaked with oil. Torches waited at intervals. At his right knelt Massey with broken blade of other strapped to staff, point luminous. At his left stood Godry Faring holding banner of crowned stag half-singed, yet defiant. Horns blared 3, then again. Jon raised arm, archers loosed. Black shafts streaked sky where they struck, whites crumpled, shards of ice erupting from skulls. Yet more came, clambering over fallen like ants across carcass. Dead giants hurled tree trunks, one struck Wall's gate, wood splitting though barred with iron. Builders cursed, ramming bolts through gaps. Melisandre began to chant atop a mound of coal heaped before the gate. Her voice soared, high Valyrian cadences weaving through air. Coals quickened, orange deepening to white. Within, runes traced in salt gleamed. Snow hissed, melted in ring around mound. Steam whipping upward to join voice. The first whites reached trenches. Flaming arrows dropped. Oil erupted. Walls of crimson. Undead staggered, clothes igniting. Yet others at rear raised arms and cold winds roared, extinguishing sections of fire, rolling frost which crept across pits, hardening oil into brittle sheets. Stannis strode forward. Hold line! He leapt trench on plank, broken sword in hand, torch in other. Massey followed. Knights formed crescent shield wall. Whites crashed. Spears thrust. Torches swung. Flesh burned. Bones snapped. And other glided in, sword whistling. Stannis met it mid-charge. His chipped steel struck and cracked anew but held. He spun, torch sweeping creature's thigh. Blue flame licked. No effect. Massey thrust staff. Ice blade chunk bit deeper, and the other shrieked, voice like icicles grinding. Stannis buried torch into gap beneath its armpit. Crack spidered, body shattered, showering frost. On Wall walk, another foe, an undead eagle with wingspan of horse, swept archers, talons ripping. Jon severed one wing with long claw, the beast tumbled into ranks below, scattering whites. Tormund howled, flipping axe through midair to cleave skull when it rose. But for every corpse felled 3 more clambered. Pressure mounted, trenches filled with bodies, bridging flames. Dead giants beat at frozen oil until it cracked, whites crossed charred planks, surging. Builders struggled to brace inner gate now shaking from impacts. Crossbows twanged, bolts shattering ribs but not resolve. Melisandre's chant rose in crescendo, coal mound erupted, geyser of red gold fire whirling skyward. She thrust arms wide, flame coiled along her limbs like serpents. With sudden motion she threw both hands toward battlefield. A ribbon of living fire leapt, snaking across trenches, sweeping into midst of undead. Heat so fierce it turned snow to fog in heartbeats. Whites ignited where touched. Yet among them, an other raised spear of ice etched with witch marks, hurled through wave of flame. The spear pierced the whirlwind. Fire doused midair, fragments scattering like dying embers across snow. Melisandre staggered. Blood seeped from her nostrils, steaming. Still she lifted voice, though hoarser, and flame flickered anew. But Stannis saw her falter. He knew Pyrrhic edge of magic, price always paid. He turned to Jon atop rampart, gestures urgent. Jon nodded, signaled horns. From inner yard, 15 men emerged bearing clay pots of wildfire, scavenged from ships at Eastwatch, precious and perilous. They hurled crates over parapet. Jars burst amid throng, emerald conflagrations bursting nearly cold in hue yet heat beyond reason. Undead exploded. Others recoiled, slick armor steaming green. One caught flame. Cracks rippled across crystalline flesh. It fell, screaming. Victory's scent. Burnt cedar, sulfur, wafted. Men cheered ragged, but sound cut short as horn blew from Westwatch. A new force advanced, not dead, but living wildlings who refused truce, clans bound to the Weeper, charging through breach they'd long hidden. Their war cries tangled with white howls. Chaos churned. Jon cursed, leapt stairs 3 at a time, met them where they scaled rubble at tower space. "You fight wrong battle," he shouted, voice lost amid clangor. Axes swung. He parried, pommel smashing jaw of raider, another lunged, spear grazing mail. Jon knocked aside and countered, blade slicing air before halting recognition, the Weeper's daughter he'd spared once. Hesitation near cost him, she stabbed, but arrow from an unseen ranger caught her throat. She fell, eyes wide, blood steaming. Jon's breath hitched, he drove onward, will forge to diamond. Stannis beneath saw turmoil above. He could not spare men, gate shuddered again, bars split. When hinges failed, Stannis stepped forward alone to breach, torch in left, shattered steel in right. He pressed shoulder to wood as it burst inward, splinters raked cheek. First white through met torch in face, second carved by broken edge. Beyond, swirling blizzard of undead filled tunnel. Close ranks. Stannis bellowed. Knights surged, shields wedging door remnants. They shoved, using corpses as ballast until gap sealed with piled flesh, though foot gap still hissed freezing winds. Then doom came. A horn note deeper than any forge bell tremored across battlefield. Snow swirled, thickened, lifted in whirls like colossi taking form. Trees creaked, within their silhouettes glowed azure lights. From dark stepped a figure larger than giants, cloaked in ice mist, antlers of frozen marrow crowning brow, a being woven from myth, the first other, father of cold nights. Soldiers froze, some in awe, others in terror petrifying as stone. The creature lifted arm, frost rippled outward in wave. Flames died where touch reached, torches, braziers, even wildfire puddles sputtered, dimming to emerald smoke. Melisandre shrieked, ruby blazing a last burst crimson. She flung both arms skyward. Fire erupted from her form, she became pillar of light. It stretched skyward, struck clouds, parted them to reveal hidden sun pale above. The sun's feeble rays reached field, gilding frost and blood gold. The first other flinched, raising arm toward. Stannis seized moment. He ripped the broken ice blade from Massey's staff, screamed wordless fury, charged. The ice blade glimmered, alive, repelled by itself, yet he gripped through agony. Jon saw movement, King's lone rush, and vaulted parapet, dropping 20 feet into snowdrift. Pain speared ankle, but he sprinted, longclaw shining. Stannis closed, drove blade at creature's chest. Ice cracked but did not shatter, shock-numbed arms. The other backhanded him, crown flew, landing skitter on icy stones. Stannis crashed, ribs cracking. Still he tried to rise. Jon reached King's side as first other raised colossal sword of black ice. Without thought, Jon interposed long claw. Valyrian met shadow steel. Clash rang like cathedral bell. Sparks burst, red, blue, white. Shock nearly split wrist, but Jon held. Creature pressed. Snow beneath Jon's boots hissed, vaporizing from cold radiating. He braced, sinking knee. Stannis forced to feet. Seized creature's leg with useless hand, stabbing broken blade between joints. The other roared, sound freighted with centuries. A howl of ancient agony. Melisandre's pillar dimmed. She collapsed, smoke rising from charred robes. Yet flare had served. Clouds parted, and a single shaft of sunlight struck Longclaw. The blade blazed, runes ablaze in silver fire. Jon felt warmth surge through arm, melting frost on beard. He pushed. The black ice sword cracked, splintered, exploded into shards that evaporated to mist. The first other staggered, chest wound spreading spiderweb of fractures. Jon swung overhead, Longclaw cleaved collar to hip. The creature burst in storm of snowdust, swirl scattering like doves. Silence thundered. Whites jerked, faltered, collapsed as strings cut, each corpse sagging lifeless. Remaining others turned, gliding back toward forest, shrouds of mist swallowing forms. Those still ablaze at perimeter shattered mid-stride. Horns blew victory, rolling like summer thunder. A cheer rose yet caught when eyes fell on Melisandre, smoke still curled from skin, eyes charcoaled hollows. She breathed faint embers, hands clutching cracked ruby whose light now flickered dim as candle stub. Stannis knelt beside her though ribs groaned. She looked on him, lips blackened. Light kept its promise. He bowed head. Your fire saved realm this day. Davos limped forward, eyes shining. Her fire, your steel, his blade, he nodded to Jon, and the courage of all living. Jon leaned on Longclaw, chest heaving. Frost melted, trickling pink where cuts bled anew. Above, sun climbed higher, weak yet radiant, painting walls face gold. Snowfields glittered. Men stared, half expecting dream to fade. But warmth touched them, slight, trembling, real. Stannis stood, retrieved his crown from slush, set it upon brow crusted with ice dust. He looked across yard. Brothers in black embraced wildlings, knights clasped hands with spear wives. Boundaries shattered like ice swords. He drew breath, voice hoarse yet carrying. The wall holds. Cheer roared, no region, faith, or oath unmoved by sound of survival. He turned to Jon. Lord Commander, riders will bear word to every holdfast from Dorne to the gift. They must know the knight's true face and who faced it down. Jon wiped blade on torn cloak. Winter is not ended. More foes may come. Stannis nodded once. Then we forge peace while snows are thin. He faced soldiers. The realm has many kings, tonight it has one cause. Remember. Melisandre coughed faint spark. Davos crouched, cradling head. Jon knelt too, pressing 2 fingers to her wrist. A pulse, weak but present. She would live, though scorched scars branded red across pale flesh. Night approached by then, but not the black night of dread, rather a hushed dusk-bearing promise of stars. Fires burned in braziers to warm wounded, not ward invaders. Cook fires rose, stews bubbling with cod and oat, laughter intermingled with weeping. Stannis paced ramparts one last time, eyes sweeping horizon. In quiet he spoke to Davos. I saw throne, he said. Found duty larger. Thrones are chairs, Davos replied, voice soft. Duty is what fills them. The king's breath misted. When realm next calls, will I answer as king or man? Answer as Stannis. Davos's gaze held pride. That will be enough. Below, Jon held council with surviving clans, black brothers, northern lords. Treaties spoke of lands south for wildlings, vows of grain for night watch, rights pledged to memory of shared blood. It would take years to settle knots, but first strands were tied by hearts still racing from common peril. Aurora shimmered again, soft veils across sky, yet now they danced in colors warmer, pinks like dawn, greens light as spring leaves. Men pointed, smiles unguarded. Stannis paused, watched lights ripple. War yet brewed in South Cersei and Aegon rumors, Selsword gold, but for one breath realm exhaled. He turned away, boots crunching fresh fallen snow, and descended stairs toward campfires where men of every banner shared bowls, songs, and stories lit by flickering heat. Behind him his shadow lay long upon walls, white face, crowned, yes, but crowned by flame and frost alike, as if the very world had set its marks upon him. In the hush before night's full descent, a single raven winged southward bearing message, the long night is stayed. The fire persists. The king endures. Somewhere beyond sight, in chambers where power schemed, lords and queens would read those words and ponder. In barrens across sea, dragons stirred from slumber sensing shift of fate. But here, at edge where light met endless dark, living breathed free if only for a heartbeat. They would remember that heartbeat, cradle it through winters yet to come, kindle it in hearths, pass it through stories so children unborn might hear. And in that memory, perhaps dawn would find purchase once more. The night after the battle ended in brittle frost, the relief of survival settled across Castle Black like a fragile thaw. Tents sprang along the cleared yard where dying whites still smoldered in oily trenches. Bursts of laughter cracked the hush whenever someone dared recall how death itself had retreated. But the revel was muted, every voice weighed with the knowledge that triumph had come at a cost measured in scar and shadow. By dawn, Jon Snow stood once more atop the wall, spine aching, left ankle bound tight. The sunrise crawled pale over a land scraped clean by cold. Far below, torches traced the king's encampment at the tree line like sparks stitched into a black cloak. He watched the flames fade one by one until only thin lines of smoke teased the wind. Hours later he descended the switch stair, collecting Maester Aemon's old chain of keys from Bowen Marsh before crossing the yard toward the solar. Within, Stannis Baratheon waited, shoulders squared in a plain boiled leather jerkin slick with oil where wildfire sparks had kissed it. He sat at a long plank table littered with charts inked by Castle Black's old scribes, vessels of the watch that few living brothers had ever used. At his elbow knelt Shireen solemn, face scarred by grayscale, yet eyes bright beneath a shock of windswept hair. She passed her father a quill every time he finished scrawling a note, expression grave as any lord's. Jon bowed. The wall stands because of your men, he said, voice still hoarse from smoke. And because of yours, Stannis replied, not glancing up. The dead feel fire and steel, but they fear disciplined hearts most. He paused, rubbed at bruised ribs. A quick wince betrayed pain he still refused to treat. We have earned one night's mercy. The second dawn will not be as kind if we waste it. Jon nodded. You intend to march south again? Stannis's quill halted. In time, he tapped a rune scribbled beside Eastwatch. The wall needs garrisons shored. Eastwatch is half-manned. The night fort rots. We cannot leave chinks wide for foes waiting in dark. I will leave men, mine and yours, to fortify. But I cannot tarry at this gate while vipers breed in King's Landing. Your Grace, Jon said softly, the realm still bleeds from war. If the South believes winter ended, they will not march north again should the others return. That is why I will carry the war to them. Stannis's voice rang like hammer on anvil. I shall bear this proof. He lifted the fractured crystal blade pried from the first other's corpse. Frost still curled inside shards like veins in amber. Let every lord and maester touch the cold of it. No man can dispute what came for them, and no king save me kept them from doom. Jon studied the shards. You would trade fear for allegiance. Fear is coin, Stannis agreed, but trust is anchor. I will bind Southron houses with both. Manderley's grain saved this day, the reach must feed the next. If they yield, good. If not, the stag's rack breaks the rose. Jon wondered at the sharpness of that vow, but before he could speak Davos Seaworth limped in, snowflakes clinging to the braids of his beard. He carried a small wooden chest bound by black iron. Inside lay scrolls affixed with seals of dire wolf, merman, seahorse, and flayed man, each pledge wrung from northern lords in the feverish weeks since Winterfell. Davos placed the chest before Jon. Charters of land and freedom, the Onion Knights said. Signed by Mors Umber, Lady Dustin, even Ryswell. They swear fealty to King Stannis, yet each reserves right of the old gods, free trade, and self-rule north owed the neck. The north would remain the north, Jon murmured. Under the crown, Stannis agreed. As it ever was, save that this crown will not flay its wards or sell them to Tywin's spawn. With these in hand, I can march south free of revolt at my back. Jon considered the parchment. And what of the free folk? Part of the realm now. Stannis shrugged. They bled here same as knights. Grant them the gifts, abandoned farms, a tithe to the watch, and they will guard this wall from their own. He tapped the map. I expect resistance from lords who fear wildling axes at their doors. But fear is quelled by order. Tormund Giantsbane swore hostages, his youngest son, his daughter Munda. They will ride with us as proof of goodwill. Jon exhaled. That will cost him dearly. A king offers honor, a father pays love. Stannis' eyes softened just once toward Shireen. We all pay. Preparations consumed 3 days, each dawn colder than the former. The watch's builders constructed new parapets at Eastwatch and iced them with lime so frost would bond mortar swift. Donal Noy's old forge rang again as giants from Magnar's tribe hauled bellows while Ireborn prisoners hammered bars into crude spears. In the cellars, Samwell Tarly sorted casks of obsidian daggers shipped from Dragonstone, black glass shimmering green at edges, sharp enough to steal breath by touch. They packed crates bound for every hall between the wall and the trident. In the library, Jon convened scribes. Gilly's boy toddled between desks while parchment flew. Each scroll contained an account of the Long Night's return, witness testimony, casualty records, descriptions of others slain and wights reanimated. Sam affixed copies of Eamon's old treatises on legends of the Dawn Age. Ravens launched hourly toward Old Town, White Harbor, Riverrun. One sword for Sunspear, though Jon doubted southern sands would heed frost tales from northern throats. By the fourth sunrise, the king's column stood poised beyond Castle Black's outer moat. 5,000 marched, Baratheon knights, northern levies, spearwives bound by new oaths, and 200 black brothers who volunteered to serve as heralds of night. They carried torch poles tipped with dragonglass, banners patched but bright. Jon rode among them until the first ridge, then reined ghost back. The direwolf whined low as the host disappeared between frost-browned pines. South of the neck, winter had not relented. It brooded like a dire lord across the fields of the Trident, blighting barley to brittle husks and driving peasants to barter children's toys for stale oats. In Kings Road villages, smallfolk huddled in barns where chickens once slept. They cursed the crown yet whispered rumors that a fiery stag walked beneath snow that the wall itself had screamed. Lancel Lannister heard the whispers whilst riding with Ser Kevin's outriders, trudging north through flurries thick as smoke. He looked thinner than tales once painted him, hair shorn close since his escape from Cersei's intrigues. When a farmer begged bread in the road, Lancel tossed half a loaf, murmuring prayer to the seven. A fellow rider scoffed. You feed tongues that will wag in Stannis' favor. Better wagging than silent in death. Lancel replied and rode on. Though he wore red lion surcoat, frost had dimmed the hue, like the house itself, fading as night pressed. At Harrenhal, Ser Kevin gathered council in the Hall of 100 Hearths, its towering blackened stones exhaling cold drafts. Qyburn hovered at his shoulder, parchment listing armies. Tyrell host diminished to 15,000. Red wine ships frozen in harbor, crown storehouses half empty. The king's coffers bleed, Kevin muttered. Without reach harvest, there is no silver to hire golden company. Qyburn's pale eyes glinted. We might procure other alliances. Ironborn captain, sell sales of stepstones. None will stand when the cold comes. Kevin smoothed gray beard. We must sue Stannis for truce. Qyburn opened his mouth. Cersei's latest letter burned in his sleeve, warning against peace, yet before he spoke, horns on Harrenhal's ramparts brayed alarm. A raven from King's Landing, black wings beating, alighted on the dais rail. The attached scroll concerned wildfire stores missing beneath the Red Keep and rumor of alchemists summoned by the Queen. Kevin read, face draining. My niece will burn the city rather than yield. Wildfire cannot melt snow, Qyburn whispered. True, Kevin sighed, but it can melt crowns. Far to the east, across the icy narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen stood on the prow of a cog translated from Valentine's slavers, wind carving tears from her eyes. Drogon wheeled above, wings slashing gray skies as storms churned. The reports reached her at Braavos, Westeros locked in winter, and a dragon queen might warm it. Yet now the winter wind sliced her cheeks. She watched whitecaps and wondered whether kingdoms froze while she chased broken chains. Dario Naharis leaned at her side. Cold suits you, Khaleesi. Makes your eyes brighter. She smiled without mirth. It reminds me of stories Viserys used to tell. Snows that swallowed whole towns. I thought them lies. Perhaps they were warnings. Dario gestured west. Stannis fights dead things. Lannister's plot. A boy king grips a throne. Meanwhile dragons fill the sky. He pointed upward where Drogon screeched. If Westeros will not beg for you, perhaps winter will drag them. She turned. My claim will not rest on fear. I will answer their fear with hope. Dario smirked. Hope seldom wins battles, but dragons do. Her gaze hardened. Then I must be both. She raised a hand to Drogon's silhouette, feeling the thrum of heat beneath her palm though he flew afar. When we land at White Harbor, we will see whether the realm desires hope or fire. Manderley's harbor bustled again when Stannis' vanguard rode in early frostfall. 3 merchant carracks anchored off the outer breakwater, hulls crusted with rime, sails patched with old quilts. Deckhands pitched frozen cabbages by the crate to lads on the quay while gulls shrieked overhead. Willa Manderley received the king in the long gallery above the watergate where marine tapestries luffed in drafts. Your grace returns accompanied, she observed, eyeing Tormund's children among the hostages, serious girl in bare fur cloak, boy with mop of red curls. White Harbor will billet them properly. Spare your silks, Stannis said. They are proof, not prisoners. Keep them as equals, or risk revolt. Willa curtsied. If free folk treat our laws with respect, we shall treat them with courtesy. Those who steal will lose fingers, those who kill will lose heads. So stands the law for all. He strode to window overlooking galleys. We resupply for march south. I need 6 cogs swift enough to skirt breakers. We have 3 plus a dozen fisher skiffs. She scratched at a ledger. But tides freeze each hour. You cannot sail to Gulltown without risking hull to icebergs. Then we walk. Stannis' jaw set. Break trails along coast, use skiffs to ferry grain between inlets. If road fails, wheels become runners. Might I suggest, Willa ventured, that gulls fly south while wolves gather. My ravens tell of a new claimant, one calling himself Aegon Targaryen landing at Storm's End. He holds Griffin's Roost, Rain House, half the Marchers. Stannis turned. A Blackfire pretender's rogue sells words. Let Connington caw. Birds rarely stop winter. Perhaps. Her lips curved faint. But rumor claims Queen Cersei dresses Tommen in Mycella's black to hide his hunger's pallor. And every fool at court prays for reach convoys while stormlands slip away. Aegon's step may be surer than you think. Stannis did not blink. If he is Targaryen, let Dragon face stag. The field will show which blood is true. He glanced at Shireen lingering by door, her gray-scaled cheek turned toward view of ships. When we reach the Trident, we will offer parley. If he yields to justice and joins against Winter, he lives. If not, he falls. Willa bowed once more. The harbor will honor your needs, your grace. When she straightened, her voice softened so only he heard. The North remembers, but it also hungers. Do not forget us when your road turns warm. He almost smiled, thin, brittle. I remember all dead. Jon Snow spent those same days settling tension along the Gift. Raiding partisans still prowled ghost villages, clashing with clans newly sworn to peace. At Queen's Crown, a farm burned when a watchman's torch fell, 2 children died. Jon carried their bodies to the sept shell, laid them beneath charred rafters, and knelt until knees numbed in slush. When he rose, he met Tormund's gaze with tear-scorched eyes and said, "We build new hearths here. We do it together." Tormund nodded, voice thick. "Aye, Lord Crow. We bury old hatreds with new dead." Together they ordered construction parties. Watch builders, spearwives, farmers. The Gift bristled with hammer blows echoing long into twilight while Ghost paced between timber stacks, sniffing sawdust. Letters poured from south, some praising their courage, others condemning the Union with savages. Jon read each at dawn, weighed them by candlelight. When he received a sealed raven from Old Town bearing the Hightower sigil, he opened it with caution. Archmaester Marwyn offered dragonglass lore, and a rumor, Daenerys Targaryen crossed the sea. Jon felt a thrill like ice water. A dragon queen and a stag king. 2 fires may warm a realm or burn it. He penned reply, urging caution and urging Maester to send all books on Azor Ahai, Lightbringer, Dawn Comet. He sealed with black wax stamped direwolf, dispatching the raven at once. Stannis' column left White Harbor trailing sledges stacked with barley and salted haddock, each sledge pulled by shaggy garrons purchased from mountain clans. They followed the King's Road south, sleds skidding over packed ruts. At the head rode Massey and young Lord Umber, sparring over whether the stag or the giant would draw more cheers. Behind, Melisandre slept in a curtained litter, skin still blistered yet healing under salves brewed by black sisters from Bear Island. On the 11th night, the host reached the ruins of Queen's Crown Farm. Jon had already left, but the new settlers greeted the king with bread baked of cornmeal and dogwood flour. They sang a song unknown to Southrons, the Hall of Crows and Clans, speaking of black and red forging gold in the furnace of dread. Stannis listened by the fire, head bowed, and allowed the faintest thaw of features when he realized their ballad had no king save that sword in the dark who wields the dawn. He nodded once, took no offense, and ordered each singer a ladle of wine. In the morning, scouts rode in wild-eyed. Men in bright green cloaks raided farms near Maidenpool, butchering cattle for shrinking Tyrell army. Stannis' jaw clenched. He dispatched Godry faring with 500 to intercept. They returned 3 days later dragging 7 prisoners. Reach soldiers gaunt and frostbitten. Under interrogation they spoke of starvation. Mace Tyrell withdrew to Bitterbridge, leaving foragers to glean north. The Tyrell host was dying where they camped, winter pressing into verdant hearts that had known only summer. That is the fate of those who deny winter, Stannis warned his captains. We will show them mercy, but we will show them truth. He ordered the prisoners clothed, fed, and released with casks of oats, and a cart carrying the shattered other's sword so they might testify. Cersei Lannister stood at her balcony in the Tower of the Hand, cradling Tommen's cheeks as he coughed blood flecks onto fleece. The city below echoed with shouts. Bread riots flared near Flea Bottom. In the shadow of Baelor's September lay wagons of unburied corpses, all starved before succor. Pycelle tottered in, robes thick against chill. "Your Grace," he quavered. "The bakers demand grain. The Iron Bank demands coin. Demand," Cersei hissed, "is for those who hold power." She stroked Tommen's hair. Qyburn arrived next, slipping through parted drapes as though carried by smoke. "Our wildfire vials are placed, my queen. One spark near Guildhall will turn the Blackwater into jade flame." "Good." She kissed Tommen's brow, clammy, feverish. "Stannis will not sit my throne. Let winter devour him." Qyburn's eyes glittered with unnatural fervor. "He brings proof of monsters. Monsters at my gate already. She closed curtains against roars rising from the streets. Somewhere distant, a bell tolled warnings. Let us see if beasts of snow fare better than lions of flame. At Riverrun, Sansa Stark, still Elaine in letter but Sansa in heart, read ravens describing Stannis' approach to the Trident. She stood in Lord Edmure's solar, the morning light trembling through arrow slits. Blue-gray fish banners no longer ruffled the keep, now the ramparts bore a dire wolf crowned by 7-pointed star, sign of an alliance still fragile. The blackfish sat near the hearth, cleaning rust from a longsword. He comes, Sansa said softly. He will need bread, Brynden Tully grunted. My stores barely feed garrison. Frey's pillaged farms. Tyrells hoard what they can't devour. Sansa swallowed, thinking of starving children in Wintertown. We will open the granaries and pray the gods send spring. If they do not, we will plant again in frozen earth. The blackfish eyed her, keen glimmer of pride. Your father's steel in your spine. He would smile. He would counsel caution. She folded the letter. If King Stannis arrives, I must greet him as lady of this house, yet I am no crowned wolf. Not yet, Brynden said. But crowns are forged in moments when iron is hottest. He sheathed sword with a hiss. And winter has kindled every hearth. Stannis broke camp 2 leagues north of the Twins. Walder Frey sent envoys laden with honeyed goose, but the king refused feast, citing plague rumors. Instead, he dispatched Maester Tybalt to inspect the causeways. What Tybalt found chilled more than frost. Frey men-at-arms lined battlements with crossbows. The crossing price had tripled since last moon. Stannis ordered the host to ford upstream where a hidden shallows once used by Robb Stark cut beneath willow thickets. They crossed at dawn, frost turning water to slush around calves, yet not one crossbow bolt hissed. By midday they camped south bank, miles past Frey walls. Walder's ravens arrived too late, wings iced. Their messages begged forgiveness. Stannis burned them unread. At Seaguard, Lord Jason Mallister opened gates before trumpets finished call. He greeted Stannis in snow-strewn courtyard, offering stripling archers to swell vanguard. Our quivers emptied at Twins, he said. We owe the crown no fewer arrows than Freys took. Swear to keep faith, Stannis replied, and arrows will find purpose. Mallister knelt, crisp. For justice, he vowed. Marching south, the host met refugees fleeing King's Landing. Families without shoes, merchants rolling handcarts of dried figs, septas leading lines of pale orphans. They spoke of smoke darkening sky, of gold cloaks turning swords on bred rioters, of a boy king coughing life away. Each tale carried dread to the campfires, but Stannis seized them as tools. He gathered the starving, fed them broth from stores, sent them home with sigils of Baratheon stag pressed into oak lozenges. Show this at any holdfast flying my banner, he told them. No man will deny you shelter. Soon wagons of destitute trailed his march like silent testimony, adding weight to his claim of mercy. Some captains grumbled, every belly added strain on oats. Davos soothed them. We share bread now or fight revolt later. Still hunger gnawed. When a teamster cracked a whip too hard at his mule, soldiers muttered, Stannis' justice will feed the beast first. Whispers became legend, that the king could conjure loaves by fury alone. Melisandre occasionally walked among them, shrouded though healed. Her hair, once vivid scarlet, had faded to wine dark, as though flame consumed pigment. She spoke little, but when she did, she insisted the night's true war lingered. We have shattered a sword, she told a clutch of spearwives, palm hovering above a cook fire. But the hand that wields 10,000 blades remains. Some shivered, others spat in defiance. Yet all listened. Across Storm's End's greenstone walls, Aegon. Young, lean, silver-gold hair tied in a warrior's knot paced the ramparts. The sea slammed cliffs with sprays of foam that turned to stinging ice. Jon Connington joined him, wolfskin cloak snapping. Baratheon marches north of the Blackwater, Connington reported. Tyrells limp behind, Lannisters choke within city. You must strike while they bleed. Aegon studied gray waves. Stannis fights Winter and Lannister both. Could he not be ally? Ally now, rival soon. Connington's voice tightened. You are dragon. He is stag. One crown, one realm. Aegon clenched fists. My aunt Daenerys lives. If dragons cross sea, 3 heads may wear one body of flame. Connington frowned at mention of dragons, yet bowed. Your grace must choose path swiftly. Stormlands rally, Morrigan fell, Dondarrion they stand ready. March on King's Landing and Lannister falls by midsummer. Aegon nodded, though eyes lingered northward where broken cold clouds bruised horizon. War at two fronts will split realm anew. I have no wish to be king of ashes. Cunnington's brows drew. Better ashes than snow-buried bones. Aegon turned. I will send envoy to King Stannis. Offer peace, union against dark. Jon Cunnington stiffened. Bold or foolish. Either brings destiny. Aegon's smile held sorrow older than his years. We will see which the gods favor. Jon Snow received Aegon's envoy weeks later, a knight called Ser Raleigh Duckfield, feet blistered from journey. He bowed low in the Lord Commander's hall. Prince Aegon extends greeting, offers alliance of dragon and wolf. Jon raised brow. I am no wolf king, sire. Yet blood of wolves runs in you, Duckfield replied. He produced a parchment bearing three-headed dragon stamped crimson. Aegon proposed Congress at Maidenpool. He, Stannis, and Lord Commander of Night's Watch to forge treaty. Jon considered. He sent Raven post-haste to Stannis, now besieging Maidenpool's outer palisade where Tyrell foragers dug trenches. Stannis's reply arrived fast, ink-blotched from saddle bounce, except, war waits upon no crow's wings. The meeting set for first day of renewed moon. Maidenpool lay half-ruined by Tyrell retreat, its timber walls blackened where hungry men had lit fires against frost. Stannis's engineers mended breaches with stone quarried from riverbanks, raising watchtowers of frost mortar at each corner. When Aegon's host approached, 2,000 Stormlanders clad in scaled green sure as summer, they found gates open. Within courtyard, braziers burned blue wood and tables arrayed beneath canvas boasted boiled crab and dried apples, the last of reach fruit captured en road. Stannis awaited on dais of wagon crates, crowned dull beneath gray sky, sword belted but sheathed. To his right stood Jon Snow in black, to left Melisandre in scarlet. When Aegon dismounted, Wind whipped his cloak bearing a red dragon half eclipsed by white sunburst, a new sigil he'd chosen to signify mourning. Ravenblack Cunnington escorted him. The crowd hushed when the two kings faced each other, mirrored by direwolf bastard in between, stag crowned with iron, dragon crowned by rumor, wolf none would kneel to. Stannis spoke first. If you are true blood of Rhaegar, I name you kin. If false, I name you pretender. Aegon's chin lifted. Test my blood in any forge you wield, Lord Baratheon. I've no need of alchemist's arts, Stannis said. I test men in battle and truth. Tell me, will you kneel to justice or cling to right forged by songwriters? Aegon's eyes flashed violet. Justice is the song of kings. I would see realm whole, not sundered by claim after claim. You faced night's shadow and triumphed. Yet alone, you will face lions, roses, krakens, and dusk wolves beyond. Join with me and throne is ours. Break oaths with me, and realm stands whole again. Stannis considered, silent long that wind keened between stones. I swore oath at Dragonstone to defend realm against false heirs. Tommen is no king. If you be Rhaegar's son, you outrank the bastard lance of Lannister. But you are young and untested. Duty crowns no babe without proving man. Aegon reached to belt, drew blade slender and smoke dark. Valyrian steel inherited from his guardian. He pressed point to palm, drew blood. Test me with this, he whispered. He offered hilt to Stannis. The king did not take it. I test you with winter. He gestured north. Ride with us. March on King's Landing through snows Tyrell's dread. Face starvation, ambuscade, wildfire. If you hold, I call you dragon. If you fail, I call you cinder. Aegon sheathed sword. And when the city falls, it will fall to justice. Throne shall heed voice of the realm. Jon stepped forward. The realm's voice speaks first of survival. Summer returns only if unity roots deep. A council of monarchs may mitigate war. He looked between stag and dragon. Form a regency. Rule together until winter ends. Connington scoffed. Two kings wearing one crown? Why not? Jon challenged. The realm uncommon demands uncommon answer. Ice came for us all, we slew it together. Let us govern likewise. Stannis' gaze drilled into Jon's. An anvil must not be asked if hammers share blows. He turned to Aegon. I accepted alliance at the wall. I accept again, but command is mine until Iron Throne lies bare. Aegon nodded after breath. Command suits you, uncle, if counsel is mine. Council of 7, Baratheon, Targaryen, Stark, Martell, Tyrell, Greyjoy, Arryn. We lead realm until peace. Stannis' mouth thinned. Tyrell burns bread for spite. Greyjoy raids orphan homes. Council built of enemy seats is parliament of treachery. Then make a charter of consequence. Who betrays council betrays realm. Aegon stepped onto dais, extending gloved hand. Power shared ensures power used well. Jon watched, heart pounding as future pivoted on handshake. Stannis' fingers twitched. Melisandre's eyes flared scarlet, but she said nothing. Davos murmured low at Stannis' shoulder. He offers peace by risking pride. The king breathed deep, winter steam curling from lips. Then he clasped Aegon's wrist firm, unflinching. The camp erupted, some cheering, others shouting dissent. But above the roar, horns sounded thrice. Wildlings from outer picket rode in, crying, scouts sighted rose banners. Tyrell hosts 3 leagues. Stan. NIS released grip, turned to Davos. Form lines. He faced Aegon. Dragon King prove scale. Maidenpool stands or falls by dawn. Aegon smiled grim. Then let dawn judge us. Tyrell knights advanced beneath livery tattered and muddied, their bannermen gaunt from half rations. Lord Garland rode at the front, still captive though granted parole to speak. He lifted visor, calling across no man's land, voice raw. Stand aside, Baratheon. The Reach will not bend knee to winter's butcher. Stannis rode forth alone, helmed but visor open. The Reach already bends knee to hunger. Kneel once more, this time to justice, and I feed every man the rose abandoned. Garland's gaze fell to starving infantry behind him. Fresh recruits from cottages once golden. He swallowed. What guarantee? Stannis drew shattered crystal blade, thrust it skyward. The same steel that shattered death will spare life. Trust deeds, not words. He spurred mount back. Trumpets blared. Baratheon shields locked. Half the Tyrell line hesitated, spears wavering. Hunger's weight sagged shoulders deeper than fear of swords. When Stannis ordered his archers to notch but not loose, silence throbbed. Aegon rode down line, calling, "Lay arms, and you dine this eve beneath banners of peace." Some men sobbed. Others shook heads at honor's tug. Took one arrow loosed by unknown hand to break stalemate. It sliced through air, thunked into a Tyrell lieutenant's throat. Chaos erupted. Mace's personal guard believed treachery. They lowered lances. Baratheon's spears thrust. Tyrell ranks splintered. Yet within moments Stannis signaled horns. A single blast, retreat. His men backed, shields still high. Confusion raged until dust cleared. Fewer than 20 dead, most Tyrell. Lord Garland, blood spattering gorget, dismounted, shouting, "Enough!" He stalked toward Stannis' line, helm off, hair clotted red. "Your arrow?" he demanded. Stannis shook head. "A coward among yours." Garland sank to knee. "Then take my sword. Spare my men from further folly." A surge of voices behind, murmurs of surrender. Tyrell levies dropped pikes, raising hands. Mace himself, distant, wheeled his destrier, flanked by sons of Tarly and Fossaway who urged flight. But no path existed, hunger slowed hooves, frozen ground bogged wheels. Within hour, banners of Reach lay on snow. Stannis accepted surrender terms. Tyrell host would march to Bitterbridge to harvest still-green turnip fields for elven libraries of small folk, not soldier. Mace delivered hostages, sons Willis and Garland, and swore by the 7 to provision the North come thaw. In exchange, he retained Highgarden lordship. Pride bitten, but root remained. Stannis turned to Aegon after treaty signed beneath battered hall of Maidenpool. "One rose tamed," he said. "Now the lion." News of Tyrell capitulation reached King's Landing ahead of Baratheon dragon host by way of starving deserters. Cersei read the parchment, knuckles white. Wildfire caches primed under the city trembled in her thoughts like coiled vipers. She summoned Qyburn, ordered the final powders set. Tommen lay pale on silk cushions, breath shallow. But when she kissed his brow, he opened eyes, whispering, "Mother, it's so cold." She brushed hair from his temple. "Only until dawn, my sweet. Then warmth returns." Outside, bells rang, gold cloaks quelling uprising at the fishmonger's square. Snowflakes spiraled into torchlit alleys, hissing on cobblestones. The city stank of unburied dead and fear. A raven landed on the balustrade. It bore no message, only the broken fragment of an ice blade bound to its leg with red ribbon. Cersei recoiled, but Qyburn smiled thinly. The dead send greeting. Stannis, she spat. She crushed the shard beneath heel, yet frost burned through slipper, biting skin. She hissed, blood streaking stone greenish from wildfire dust. Baratheon and Targaryen hosts camped at the ruins of the Blackwater Rush's burned mill. Cooks blocked drafts with stones from slaughtered maces' siege catapults. Jon Snow rode through tents, advising watch captains to station wildling lookouts along sewer outlets where Qyburn's rats scurried. He found Stannis at a mapboard pinned to a willow. The king traced streets like veins. 3 gates, he said, but we strike one, Lion Gate. He looked to Aegon. Your men will storm first. Dragon blood must prove loyalty. Aegon nodded. I accept. But Melisandre approached, eyes glinting. The queen will light the city herself. Wildfire plots coil beneath stones. Storm a gate and you ignite doom. Stannis frowned. You see fire and flames? I smell blood and wind. She pointed to clouds tinted emerald near horizon. Alchemists prepare. Jon exhaled. We must breach quietly, seize pyromancers before fuse lit. Davos rubbed beard. Blackwater Bay's seaward postern, the one Tyrion used for chain, still broken? Stannis considered. Could be. Then we sail upriver by night in skiffs. Land beneath city walls, ascend by Sallyport. Davos's smile flashed. Smugglers know more doors than lords. Aegon's violet eyes shone. My men will climb. Stannis clapped Davos's shoulder. Then plan as you will. Realm's dawn waits through that gate. The night chosen was moonless, clouds smothering starlight. Thin ice-crusted river shallows. Davos led 12 skiffs painted soot-black, each rowed by Night's Watch oarsmen whose strokes synced like heartbeats. On the prow of the lead skiff knelt Jon Snow, long claw-strapped, eyes fixed on looming walls where torches flickered along parapet walk. Aegon crouched at stern, cloak bound to muffle brass rings. Beside him clutched Melisandre, ruby faintly pulsing despite thick cloak. She had insisted on coming, flame guides darkness, she said. Ripples lapped hulls, water reeked of rot where corpses floated, victims of riot. They passed under Trader's Walk arch, moss dripped on helms. Davos steered toward a broken section of quay where masonry had fallen during battle years prior. Ropes slipped across silent bollards, anchors set. Jon leapt soundlessly to slime-slick stone, gesturing forward. Rangers scaled rubble, securing grappling hooks beneath overhang shielding postern arch known as Rat's Mouth, a rusted great barred way. Aegon stepped, producing slender saw. Together with Jon they cut bars tooth by tooth, minutes stretching. Inside, passage stank of mildew, narrow enough to force single file. They crept within. Above, bells tolled third watch. 42 heartbeats remained before Qyburn's alchemists met Queen beneath red keep cellars to discuss final fuses. Jon led. His torch remained unlit. Only pale ghost light glimmered from Melisandre's ruby, casting faint sanguine hush. They reached spiral stair ending at ironbound door. Aegon pressed ear, faint voices. Davos eased forward, slipped thin blade between planks. Ratchet released, door swung. They emerged into kitchen scullery. An old cook scrubbing tin pots gasped. Jon clasped mouth, nodding. She nodded back, eyes wide, then pointed to winding corridor. They moved swift. Soon marble halls spread, columns casting long shadows. Gold cloaks lounged near alcove playing dice. Aegon signaled, archers. Black-fletched shafts whisked, guards slumped wordless. They dragged bodies behind tapestry depicting Rhaegar's tourney at Harrenhal, irony unspoken. Melisandre paused at foot of stair descending toward cellars. Heat pulsed there, unnatural. Wildfire, she whispered. Like breath of caged dragon. They descended. Gloom deepened, torches sputtered green along walls seeped verdigris. Sulfur choked air. At landing, a wrought iron gate barred broad cavern where clay pots stacked like giant beehives along shelves. Within, Cersei Lannister stood clad in leathers over golden mail, hand-gripping torch whose flame danced emerald from wax-coated tip. Qyburn and slim pyromancer kneeling with matchgourds flanking. Cersei turned, torch raised. So the rats crawl. Her smile glimmered. One spark, traitors. I burn you all. Aegon stepped forward, helm removed. And She blinked, madness flickered. You wear my brother's eyes. Her torch wavered. Put flame out, Jon commanded. Open gate. She laughed, hi, Brittle. I am queen. The iron throne burns before thieves perch. She thrust torch toward pot. Arrow hissed, loosed by Davos's ranger. It struck torch, spinning it from grasp. Flame-kissed stone fizzed. Cersei shrieked, lunging to grab, but Jon vaulted gates bars, legs hooking top rail, landing inside. Qyburn hurled glass vial. Jon ducked, it shattered behind, fluid igniting hiss of smoke. Aegon forced gate after Jon, sword drawn. Cersei darted deeper between kegs, trailing laughter. Pottery cracked under boots, one spark would incinerate throne and city. Jon pursued. He cornered her near iron ladder rising to storm drains. She turned, dagger drawn stubby. I will not kneel, she hissed. I need not kneel you, Jon said, stepping. Only stop you. She slashed. He parried, twisting wrist. Dagger fell. Aegon arrived, panting. We end this, he murmured. Together they bound her wrists. Qyburn surrendered, blood trickling where arrow grazed scalp. Rangers doused fuses, sprinkling sand across floors, but some pots wept green tears. Any misstep. Melisandre entered, palms raised. Heat sparkled red veins on ruby. Fire may be chained, she intoned. Flame across floor shrank, flickered, died. The cavern exhaled cold. Cersei spat. Witch's trick. Your trick burned children at bay, Melisandre replied. Jon signaled retreat. They led captives upstairs, past corridors where gold cloaks roused by commotion stumbled into swords held by northern guards now flooding palace through alleyways. Dawn's first blush lit marble floors when they entered throne room. There, Stannis stood before the iron throne, gauntlet hand resting on pommel of sword unsheathed. Behind him burned braziers set to warm the frost that crept through shattered windows. He regarded captive queen without triumph, only weary inevitability. Cersei sneered. You want crown? Take it. It destroyed everyone before you. Better men, Stannis agreed, voice low. But not just men. This crown stands for realm, not self. He gestured to dais foot. Kneel. She laughed, but knees buckled by force of arms. Chains rattled. Aegon approached, unsheathing Valyrian blade. What fate? Stannis studied Cersei. Trial, he declared. For treason, murder, heresy. 7 will judge. 7, she coughed. Your red which scorns them. A king may serve many gods, he said. One throne to unify. He looked to Jon. And one hand to temper fire with snow. He extended crown toward Jon, not to offer but to witness. The realm will see what forged this victory. Unity of stag, wolf, dragon. We seek counsel at sunrise. Jon swallowed weight of all nights he'd known pressing. But he nodded. I will serve not crown, but people. Aegon's eyes shone. As will I. Melisandre gazed upon iron throne, twisted swords reflecting scarlet. She smiled faint. Lightbringer is not blade, she whispered to Davos aside. It is alliance. Davos nodded, tears bright. May it burn long. Weeks later, banners of all major houses flapped in red keeps refitted throne room. Tyrell rose, Martell's Sunspear, Stark dire wolf, Aegon's dragon sunburst. Snow still dusted lanes beyond, but bakers reopened. Oats from riverlands and fish from Manderley filled granaries. Gold cloaks drilled beside wildling spears under watchful eyes of Night's Watch officers. In the council chamber, Stannis presided at a round table newly forged from weirwood and ironwood circled to quell quarrel overhead. Seats engraved with sigils, crown stag, three-headed dragon, dire wolf, sunspear, winged falcon, kraken, rose. Greyjoy envoy yet to arrive, storms hindered voyage but vacant chair remained. Jon stood to present final report, rebuilding of gift, distribution of dragoglass daggers to every lord commanding more than 50 men, establishment of Knight's Lantern, beacons along King's Road to alert of future white incursion. Aegon followed, describing plan for scholars of Old Town and Citadel to study ice sword fragments, forging new steel alloy. Tyrell envoys pledged plowseed. Martell emissary offered oranges to stave scurvy. As debate cooled, small folk outside chanted, first timid, then swelling. They sang a tune foreign, words muddled, about stag at wall of frost, dragon of dawn, wolf and night. It reached windows, vibrating within stone. Stannis listened, stern features carved by responsibilities yet unlifted. He turned to counsel. "Song is memory," he said. "If we fail, it dies." He looked to Jon. "Lord Snow, you asked once if I rule as king or man. Hear my answer. Until winter ends, I rule as servant. Let this council rule with me." Aegon laid hand on table. 7 rulers for 1 realm. Jon placed his beside. For every voice. One by one, others followed. Tyrell, Martell, Aaron Steward. Manderly acting for Riverlords until Edmure sworn. Hands met in circle. Melisandre watched from shadow. Eyes dimmed to ember, as though flame satisfied. She bowed head. When she straightened, she saw through window a shaft of sunlight breaking clouds, spilling gold across cold waters of Blackwater Bay. It glinted on masons repairing chain tower where wildfire once raged. She whispered to no one, "The dawn has weight only if guarded through every night." And so the council adjourned to enact rule, penning laws, dispatching emissaries to Winterfell where Lady Sansa would oversee northern harvest, to Dragonstone where Shireen studied dragonglass forges, to distant Dorne where Nymeria's descendants hammered treaties. Their duty stretched beyond crowns. Raise roads, teach children, bury dead, heal scars. Winter lingered, but hearts burned brighter than any wildfire or ruby. Outside Red Keep gates, a young beggar approached a line of bread carts, clutching an oak token stamped with crown stag. When soldiers noticed token, they let her pass, filling her bowl with thick barley stew and half a pear from Dorne. She wept, thanked them in 3 tongues, and shuffled away toward alley where orphans waited. Overhead, snowflakes melted before touching her hair, borne aside by a soft westerly wind smelling faintly of salt and budding grass. Near the docks, Davos stood with Gendry Waters, now Master Smith, hammering new horseshoes free of usury taxes. Davos inhaled sea air, whispering to memory of Shireen's laugh-sailing toy ships. Soon he would sail again, but for trade not war. He smiled. On the battlements, Jon Snow watched Ghost prowl courtyard. He recalled Maester Aemon's words that love is the death of duty. Yet here, duty had married love, love of realm, of life, of dawn. He felt the truth like warmth after long chill. Stannis Baratheon walked alone through garden where courtyard melted to mud. He set crown on bench, touched buds of frost-white roses poking through. They would bloom, he thought, if given time. And time, though merciless, seeds hope when men hold to justice. Above, in pale sky, Drogon's shadow passed, wing beats thunderous, yet beneath them city did not cower. Children ran, pointing with delight. The dragon's flame kept hearth more certain than dread, for it was tethered to Queen set on healing. From distant north, ravens carried news, wildlings sowing rye in thawing fields, watchmen teaching letters to giant calves, whites dormant beyond mountain pass. Peace tenuous but alive. Night would fall again. Ice might rise anew. But on this day, forged by the swords of 2 kings and the will of many, the realm breathed a single breath and found it sweet. The Iron Throne remained, but it was no longer ruled by blade, rather symbol of burden shared. Justice tempered by mercy, law guided by empathy. And in memory of all who burned, froze, bled, or dreamed, the council passed its first decree that any child, highborn or low, may claim shelter beneath Crown's ward come winter's return. Somewhere in the city, a sept bell tolled vespers, a red priest lit candles near the docks, an old crone whispered prayers to the weirwood root she kept by her hearth. And though they worshipped different gods, all their voices rose together, weaving through snow-bright air, meeting its single horizon where dawn blushed. Under that rose-gold sky, Stannis lifted gaze, seeing not a throne but a horizon lit by possibility. He picked up the crown, weighed its iron in his palms, then set it gently back upon his brow. Not as a victor's laurels, but as anchor that tethered him to duty. Beyond walls, fields awaited sowing, rivers needed bridges, graves desired flowers. Work unending. But for now, the king exhaled steam into returning sun, allowed himself the first unfettered breath since War of 5 Kings began. Winter would pass. Spring would come. And when new snows fell, the realm would remember the night they united, the night they burned brighter than darkness. And remembering, they would endure. Snow returned to King's Landing on the first night of first moon, drifting through broken arrow slits and collecting in the Iron Throne's barbed hollows until its pale crust dulled the edges of 100 swords. The city lay stunned beneath that hush, as if afraid one sudden breath might snap the brittle peace forged days earlier. But within the Red Keep the work of mending had begun. Stannis Baratheon rose before dawn and walked the ruined outer yards with Davos Seaworth, counting horse lines, speaking to Highgarden farriers shoeing northern garrons, to Braavosi masons sealing cracks where wildfire heat had blistered stone. He greeted each in curt syllables, never praise, merely acknowledgement. Yet men straightened under his gaze, seeing in that rigid posture a promise that their labor mattered. When he reached the western parapet, he paused. Morning fog rolled off the Blackwater, obscuring ships anchored beyond the chain tower. Through gray veils twin dragon shapes wheeled, Drogon and Regal, the second having crossed the sea weeks after his broodmate, lured by Daenerys' call. Their roars rumbled like distant forges. 2 dragons where 3 were prophesied, Davos said. The prophecy keeps drinking half measures. Half measures may keep realm from burning, Stannis answered. 1 more beast and peace cracks like kiln-fired clay. He resumed pacing. 43 steps later he halted again as hoofbeats clattered through the barbican. A courier galloped in, cloak salt-stained. The man dismounted and knelt, offering a singed parchment wrapped in oilskin. "From Tarth, your grace," he rasped. Sails of Kraken and flayed man sighted in Shipbreaker Bay. Storm's End under siege. Stannis' jaw set. Bolton remnants, Greyjoy raiders, unlikely allies. He broke seal bearing sapphire of Selmy's quills. Ink blurred in scorch marks, but the gist was clear. Houses Bolton and Greyjoy had struck pact of desperation led by Ramsay's cousin Roger Bolton and Victarion Greyjoy, last surviving brother of Euron. The Kraken fleet battered Tidewatch while Bolton men landed south of the Rainwood, flaying small folk, crying vengeance for Winterfell. Storm's End garrison under Ser Baelor Hightower held, but food ran out. Stannis snapped fingers, a squire dashed forward with chalk and slate. In brisk strokes he outlined an oval around Shipbreaker Bay, drew crude Kraken and flayed man. "We march 3 days hence," he told Davos. "Leave light garrison in city, enough lords to keep counsel. Aegon will ride too, he must feel tempests on his face. Aegon sails north tomorrow to parley with Greyjoy envoys," Davos reminded him. "Good," Stannis said. "He'll parley on the march." He turned, striding toward Keep, sparing. One glance at dragons circling distant towers. "Tell the queen I borrow her skyfire." Daenerys Targaryen sat cross-legged atop a sun-drenched balustrade overlooking the ornamental pools of Maegor's Holdfast, though the water beneath ice shone dull as iron. She wore riding leathers lined with white harbor ermine and held an ivory flute gifted by Shireen. Drogon napped on scorched flagstones beyond, tail twitching. Regal perched on the half-collapsed sept across the courtyard, green wings mantled. When Stannis approached with Davos, she lowered flute and regarded him through strands of silver hair. "Sire," she greeted, mocking court courtesy, "I hear you need wind beneath your banners. I need jaws of flame that crack iron longships." Stannis crossed arms. "Ride with me. You command as though I were sworn knight at your fool's court. I ask as king tasked to guard realm." His gaze bored. "Greyjoy sails flay children and salt wives. They fancy weak walls. Give them terror from sky and war ends by nightfall." She swung boots over ledge, hopped down. "Dragons are not dogs to fetch. Yet injustice gnaws." She stroked Drogon's sleeping flank. "I will go if terms met." Davos inclined head. "Name them." Winter-ravaged stews of flea bottom. Open granaries, Tyrell oats, Martell citrus, Manderley fish to feed city free for a moon. "Heal them first." Stannis scowled, but Davos brightened. "Bread buys loyalty sharper than swords." "A wise demand." "Done," Stannis said. "At dawn we ride." He pivoted, cloak snapping. Drogon cracked an eyelid, golden ember within black slit, and huffed smoky breath that singed frost. Daenerys smiled to Davos. "Where dragons grow, kings learn manners." "Or burn," Davos murmured, bowing. That night, smallfolk queued in winding alleys where lanterns flickered emerald and rose. Tyrell wagons offloaded flour, Dornish boats delivered oranges packed in seaweed. Manderley barrels of pickled herring rolled on sledges across icy cobbles. Septus ladled stew while red priests recited prayers of thanks. Some citizens knelt, others merely devoured. Rumor flew that silver-haired queen had bought this feast with fire. Mothers whispered her name like lullaby, Daenerys, dream of warmth. In the Tower of the Hand, the Provisional Council convened. Aegon Targaryen presided. They had voted him caretaker while Stannis campaigned. Beside him sat Sansa Stark wearing grey velvet, Samwell Tarly representing the Archmesters, Trystane Martell newly arrived bearing treaty scrolls, Garland Tyrell, freed of hostage status, now envoy. Across the round table they studied a map of the Stormlands. Euron's death left vacuum, Samwell explained, voice timid yet sure. Victarion needs glory to outshine rumors he cowered at Pike during Long Night. Striking south ensures loot and songs. And Bolton wretches seek to avenge Winterfell, Sansa added, tone colder than the wind. They will savage shoreline settlements, hoping to draw northern soldiers away from harvest. Aegon tapped Shipbreaker Bay. We cannot fight on two fronts, city and sea. I sail with 50 Dromons to intercept Greyjoy before he lands. The rest join Stannis overland. He looked to Garland. Highgarden owes ships. Where are they? Anchored at Tarth repairing rot, Garland replied. They sail on tide. Sansa raised brow. Rot or fear? Both, Garland admitted. But they come. I sail alongside. Samwell leaned in. Archmaester Marwyn sends ravens. Obsidian-tipped ballista bolts ready to test against Kraken hulls. Load them. Aegon smiled faint. Dragonglass pierces ice and Kraken alike. 2 dawns later, the Stormlands smelled of brine and pine smoke. Stannis' army, 5,000 infantry, 1,200 mounted, 300 wildling raiders, snaked along the Rainwood track. Snow fell in soft curtains, muffling hoofbeats. At the fore rode Stannis, Davos, and Melisandre cloaked in wolf fur, above them Daenerys' sword, Drogon slicing gusts, Regal a greener shadow behind. They reached Weeping Town by dusk. Flames licked charred husks, pale corpses dangled from rafters, Bolton trophies stripped of skin. Stannis dismounted beneath a black pine, fists clenched on reins. Flaying ends tonight, he growled. He ordered Maester Tybalt to catalog dead for proper burial. A survivor emerged, old woman with salt tang and tangled hair. She knelt in snow, offering bundle, a baby swaddled but still as stone. They took her tongue, Davos translated. But not her tears. Stannis' face hardened. He lifted child, body cold yet breath faint. He draped his cloak around infant, handing to Maester. Life before banners, he said. Word spread. Soldiers marched with new fury. Scouts soon reported Bolton camp 10 leagues east, near the woodland spear point, their flayed standards bleaching in wind. A Kraken longship grounded beside smoldering fishing hamlet, its iron prow shaped like mauve leviathan. Victarion's fleet sailed further inside bay, shielded from storm swell. Stannis summoned war council round mud-scarred table inside abandoned September map, stones placed, stag for his host, Kraken tokens, flayed men. Bolton vanguard holds tree lean south of beach, Lord Glover said. Greyjoy heavies at sea. We strike simultaneously, land and water. Drogon lights ships, Melisandre offered, voice a dim chime. Fire cleanses. No, Daenerys said from doorway, fire shadow flickering behind. Fire terrifies, thralls chained to oars. We scorch deck but leave men chance to swim. Her gaze on Stannis, challenge. He inclined slightly. Dracarys limited then. He tapped Treeline. My foot smashes Bolton flank. Wildlings swing through marsh to rear. Knight's anchor center. Davos pointed to jagged reef near bay mouth. We scuttled Tyrell barges last siege, masts still protrude. Victarion's hulls run ground if lured. Lanterns on floating kegs mimic signal fires, draw him in after dark. Stannis' mouth twitched, nearly a smile. Smuggler's cunning. He turned to Shireen, present as squire despite mother's protests. You will remain here, daughter. Shireen straightened. I will tend wounded, father. Do so, he said, voice gentled. Plans set, council dispersed to ready men. Night fell cloud-choked, moonless. Along shoreline flickered dozens of small flames, oil-soaked barley barrels set adrift, each bobbing. Off coast, Victarion stood upon deck of his flagship Iron Victory, seeing false fire glow like beacons inviting plunder. He barked orders, drums pounded, fleet angled inshore. The tide turned traitor. Hulls scraped unseen timbers, keels tore on ancient wrecks. Splinters and screams tore salt air. On cliffs, Davos signaled with shuttered lantern, 3 pulses. From inland woods, where horns answered. Stannis' infantry surged, torches blazed. Bolton sentries scrambled, many half-drunk on stolen ale. Wildlings burst from reed beds, axes flashing silver under starlight. In chaos, Roger Bolton tried to rally, brandishing flensing knife, an arrow from an umber bough struck his eye. Bolton men broke, some fleeing into marsh where quick silt swallowed. Victarion cursed as flame erupted starboard. Drogon swooped low, talons raking mast, but Daenerys reined him from releasing full breath. Instead, she directed dragon fire at water near hull, steam geysering to blind deckhands. Rhaegal strafed other ships, scorching sails. Raiders leapt overboard, some dragged thralls with them, chains snapping as iron-cold water shocked limbs. Aegon's Dramans, obsidian bolts loaded, closed from seaward flank. One bolt pierced iron Victory's rudder, vessel spun, grounding on reef. Victarion roared challenge, swinging great axe. Aegon catapulted across rail on grappling line, landing with cat-like grace. Steel clanged. Axe smashed deck. Valyrian blade flicked, slicing pauldron strap. They circled, sea spray sizzling on hot planks. Below, drowning screams echoed. On beach, Stannis carved path through fleeing Boltons, his longsword slick, each thrust a punctuation. For Winterfell, for Weeping Town, for every flayed hide. At ridge, he confronted banner-bearer clutching flayed man. With one cut he felled the banner, planted Stag fiery heart in bloody sand. Soldiers saw and cheered, a sound ragged yet mighty. Davos waded knee-deep into surf, helping thralls clamber free, cutting chains. He hauled a boy of 10 onto driftwood, binding foot mangled by shackle. Baratheon sends bread, not bondage, he whispered. The boy wept. Aegon and Victarion fought across tilting deck. Axe shattered spar, blade flashed silver-black. Victarion bled from thigh but pressed, brute strength staggering prince. Then a shadow fell, Drogon perched on mainmast stump, yellow eyes luminous. Victarion faltered. Aegon lunged, blade punching through mail into chest. Iron Captain fell, axe thudding. Aegon withdrew sword, blood steaming on steel. He raised fist, trumpets answered, Greyjoy banners lowered in surrender. Flames crackled across water but abetted as sea quenched timbers. By dawn, Bolton survivors knelt bound, Greyjoy sailors disarmed, thralls freed. Stannis surveyed field, 200 of his dead, many wildlings, triple foes slain. Maester Tybalt stitched wounds, while Melisandre burned Bolton banners in pyre that sent greasy smoke swirling skyward. Daenerys watched from dune, Drogon crouched. She felt strange tug, sorrow for burnt ships, relief for spared lives. She touched Drogon's scales. Justice should temper flame, she murmured. Stannis approached, ocean wind tearing cape. Your fire proved mercy, he said gruff. Relmo's dragon. She inclined head. See it paid in bread, not gold. Paid, he agreed. He surveyed freed thralls warming by cook fires. These Kraken men. How harness their oars? Settle them, she suggested. Sailors make fishermen, builders, traders. He grunted. Let them rebuild towns they burned. Then softer, counsel wise. She regarded him, this harsh king whose edges seldom softened. In his fatigue she saw ember of warmth barely, but there. She sensed destiny knitting them not as lovers or allies of convenience, but as flint and tinder, friction to spark dawn. The captured Bolton leaders faced tribunal in Storm's End's courtyard 2 days later. Jon Snow joined by Raven, ghost loping at heel. The sun hung pale behind scudding clouds, but its light bathed aged stones in red. Stannis presided, banners of stag, dragon, wolf flapping. Roger Bolton's corpse already buried, but his lieutenants trembled. By law of realm, Stannis pronounced, flaying outlawed henceforth. Those who wield knife for bloodwrit shall hold no titles, lands, or breath. He signaled. Axemen advanced. Heads rolled. A hush settled. Not a fear but grim resolve. Jon turned from Gore, staring seaward where fleets now flew Baratheon dragon pennants. One enemy less, he said to Davos. One always rises, Davos answered. Yet council stands steadier. They climbed parapet to overlook garrison. Shireen directed nurses bandaging wounded, Tormund taught freed thralls to string bows, Dornish spearmen shared citrus to ward scurvy. Snowflakes melted on their tongues, winter tasting faintly of hope. In King's Landing, council received Raven of victory. Aegon returned days later, triumphant. Cersei remained in cell tower, awaiting trial. Tommen's condition improved on new diet. He learned letters from Shireen's scrolls. Between coughs he practiced ruling by fairness. Rumor spread, the boy king might abdicate in adulthood to serve as Lord of Storms and under new charter. Stannis had not decided, but possibilities sprouted like crocuses through frost. Greyjoy envoys arrived under flag of truce, Princess Asha leading. She offered token, a black iron circlet mailed to plank, Victarion's crown. The Ironborn tire of kings, she told council. Give assault rights, we give peace. Sansa argued for strict oversight, Samwell proposed maritime charter, Martell urged forgiving tide. They forged pact, Ironborn keep pike, pay grain tithe, abolish thrall-taking. Asha knelt to charter, the one I gleamed mischief. In Valley of Arryn, young Lord Robert died of chill. Through Regency Council, the Vale accepted Stannis' authority. Lady Sansa's cousin Bronze Yohn Royce assumed lordship till heirs chosen. Vale Knights vowed to clear King's Road of bandits. Another pillar anchored. Messages from North told of Ed restoring Eastwatch Pier, of giants assisting. Jon returned to Wall, leaving Ghost with Shireen. Dog sat with her each lesson, comforting. She wrote letters to orphans, promising books and bread. Spring teased edges of wind by second moon, not warmth, but promise. Yet Melisandre remained uneasy. She walked ramparts nightly, ruby glowing. One eve Jon found her gazing at horizon. Darkness stirs, she murmured. Not north, the east. Jon frowned. Dragons flew from east. Shadow too. She closed eyes. The stranger never sleeps. Azor Ahai's were not done. Jon recalled rumors out of Asgai, shadows twisting, priests vanishing. But there was always new storm somewhere. He quoted Maester Aemon, we fight the battles in front of us. Yes, she whispered until last. At Riverrun, Sansa convened harvest moot beneath willow canopy by Tumblestone. Riverlords pledged seed grain southward to Stormlands. In return, Tyrell estates would send citrus north. Roots and fruit, one branch, she said. Lords nodded. Winter wrought humility among proud. That night, Sansa lay awake dreaming of Robb's laugh, of Arya's grin. She wondered if spring would find them. Arya rumored in Bravos as sword dancer, Bran north of the Wall seeking ancient magics. Family scattered like seeds yet to sprout. She penned letter, home waits. The realm heals, so may we. She sealed Direwolf. Weeks slid by. Snowfall eased, sunlight lingered, minutes passed up. Farmers tilled albeit through frost, dragons basked on roofs, children chased melted rivulets through streets. War crews replaced cobbles. Atop the Red Keep, council raised new banner, crowned stag silhouetted before rising sun embraced by three-headed dragon, dire wolf guarding base. Some named it Sigil of Dawn. Stannis disliked pomp but allowed ceremony. On first day of third moon, he stood upon steps of great September rubble, site chosen as testament to rebuilding. Daenerys at left, Aegon at right, Jon before, Sansa and Davos flanking. Thousands gathered. Shireen held Tommen's hand front row. Tormund jostled for view until Samwell tugged him still. Dornish pipes played low. Stannis spoke, voice echoing across square. He told tale of night's threat of unity found in snow. We stand breathing because hands joined, he said. Let none sever. He declared abolition of feudal levies during winter, armies would be royal responsibility, leaving farmers to sow. In return, realm tax would be 1 sack grain per household. He offered amnesty for petty crimes committed during famine. He announced establishment of Nygard Road beacon towers every 40 miles linking Wall to Red Keep. Applause swelled. Daenerys spoke next, promising reconstruction, dragon flame forging aqueducts, not war. My children will warm forges that craft plowshares, she vowed. She unveiled Plan 4, Dragon Seed Academy, training smiths to harness scaled heat. Aegon addressed tyranny, creation of Council of Voices, representatives elected from each city district to advise Crown monthly. Crowd murmured, novel notion. Jon pledged Night's Watch reforms, membership voluntary across realm, land grants upon honorable term. Sansa promised orphan care. The final speaker was Shireen. Trembling, she recited decree. All children of realm, high and low, shall be taught letters by crown-funded septs or temples. Her cracked voice rang pure. People cheered longest. Then horns blew. Dragons soared overhead, casting moving shadows. Sunlight refracted off their scales, painting city gold green. Bells tolled, not for doom but dawn. But dawn always births dusk. Far east, in smoking ruins beyond Valyria, creatures of glass skin and ember eyes gathered, drawn by scent of dragon fire. They swam air like manta rays through broken sky, feeding on ash. One raised obsidian crest, releasing cry that rattled bones of dead empire. They turned west. In Ass-High, masked warlocks convened. One crushed ruby identical to Melisandre's between black claws, whispering, the flame dims. Another splayed map, pointing to Westeros, lines of shadow radiated. Yet in that moment, these portents unseen, the realm slept easier. In Winterfell's Godwood, sap thawed, at Deepwood Motte, babies born under Aurora. On Pike, Asha taught orphans to knot nets. On Dragonstone, Gendry forged alloy of dragoglass and steel that hummed when struck. The council corresponded, argued, compromised. No throne uncontested, but many shoulders bore it. In quiet chambers, Stannis sat by brazier, reading petition from distant climes, summer islanders seeking pact. He rubbed scarred knuckles. Weary? Daenerys entered unannounced. She placed small carved dragon on table, ivory, wings folded. A gift, she said. He tipped head. Symbol? No, she replied. Reminder, dragons that hoard only fire die. Those that share live. He turned carving in hand. I will remember. His eyes lifted, almost warm. And you? I remember a knight who saved realm at wall of ice. She smiled faint. Fire owes ice. Outside, wind sighed through arrow slits, smelling of cedar rather than soot. Far below, lanterns flickered along street of sisters, 3 colors, gold, red, and white. Together they lit thoroughfare once choked with bodies. Together they made shadows dance, yes, but no single flame threatened to consume. So the realm endured, blades sheathed but never far, claws folded but keen. Winter's back broken though lungs still frosted breaths. And in stories told around in hearths, children learned a new refrain that once a stag of iron will, a dragon of tempered flame, and a wolf born in midnight bound their fury, and through that bond sharpened hope until it carved a dawn bright enough to blind the dark. Beyond horizon, darkness gathered again, for darkness always returns. Yet the fires lit that winter's night now stood ready, no longer singular torches but a chain of hearths stretching wall to sea, mountain to shore, heart to heart. And in each glow one could almost glimpse a crown, not of iron or gold, but of light, resting not on one brow, but circling every soul that dared to keep watch when cold crept close. Thus the war for dawn became the labor of day, and the tale, once sung of swords and shadows, turned to quieter verses of seeds in thawing soil, of ships bearing grain not fire, of schools where grayscale-scarred girls taught kings how to spell mercy. And though somewhere beyond charts ancient evils may have stirred, in that hour Westeros stood not as 7 kingdoms nor 2 kings but as a single circle of shields, edges inward, points outward, guarding what they had earned, the right to try again. And they would. The long thaw began as a rumor whispered by rivulets that trickled where ice once ruled, a faint gurgle beneath the hush of snowbound trees and ruined battlements. It was not spring, no blossom dared yet pierce the crust, but it was an easing all the same, felt in joints and hearts and the shifting of armies that had slept too long in winter's vice. In King's Landing the gutters ran with meltwater and ash, washing the last soot of wildfire from cracked tiles. In Winterfell vapors drifted above the hot springs, curling around crenellations as if the castle itself exhaled. Yet across the realm a darker current stirred, uneasy as vultures circling a field too quiet. Sansa Stark dreamed of cold rivers. In the vision she laked barefoot through tumblestone shallows while flakes turned to petals that melted on her skin. She stooped to drink, but the water tasted of rust. When she looked up, the river had dried and the stones gleamed like broken knives. On the far bank a woman in ragged scarlet watched her, eyes glowing as though coals flickered in their depths. Sansa felt the pull of them, the same pull she had sensed the first time she glimpsed Melisandre atop the wall. The red woman smiled, but sorrow lined that smile. Behind her rose a shape like a tower made of shadow, twisting into the winter sky. Sansa woke in the keep's solar, heart hammering. The brazier burned low, parchment maps rustled on the oak table. She pressed shaking fingers to her brow, wondering whether the dream was a vision sent by the old gods or merely the echo of too many burdens carried. Dawn's pale light seeped through frosted shutters, illuminating the silver filigree on the map's edges. She breathed deep and rolled her shoulders. This day, more grain wagons would leave River Run for Maidenpool, and her seal must speed them. There was little time for dreams. She rose, donned cloak, and made for the ramparts. Blackfish Brynden met her at the stair, reporting Riverlord's oaths kept and winter barley sown beneath 2 inches of thawed crust. Yet his grim expression told her news came too. Roving bands of broken men had taken to highway robbery between Harrenhal and Salpans, wearing scraps of Bolton livery to frighten villagers. Sansa listened, eyeing the tangerine ribbon of sunrise beyond ruined towers. "Send Sir Desmond Grell with 20 archers," she said at last. "And give each broken man the choice, the night's watch or the gallows." Brynden nodded, approval crinkling weathered eyes. Before they parted he lifted a sealed letter. "Arrived by Raven from Old Town," he said. "Maester Samwell writes of shadows in the east and something called the Glass Doom." Sansa tucked wax-stamped parchment beneath her cloak. "Another worry," she sighed. "We have room for thousands." On Dragonstone winds whipped salt spray high against obsidian cliffs. Gendry waters hammered at his forge, sparks leaping like fireflies. Alongside him, a slender figure in wool robes fed thin rods of dragaglass into the furnace mouth. Shireen Baratheon, cheeks smudged, handled tongs with the care of a trained jeweler. Together they were forging light steel, an experimental alloy bonded by dragonfire and cooled in icy brine shipped from Eastwatch. Each ingot sang a clear note when struck, metal hungry for shape. Maester Ambrose, on loan from the Citadel, studied their labors with cool poised. "You realize," he murmured to Shireen, "if this bonding proves stable, we upend every notion of metallurgy recorded since the Rhoynar fled Valyria." Shireen brushed a strand of hair from her scarred cheek. "And if it fails, we append only this yard," she replied, voice touched with wry humor. She glanced toward Drogon and Rhaegal, roosting on the mountain spine above. Rhaegal raised his head, nostrils flaring as though sensing the quiver of molten glass below. Across the courtyard, Davos Seaworth arrived bearing news of the Storm's End victory and letters from King Stannis requesting more blades, more chains, more everything. Shireen's smile widened at sight of the Onion Knight. "Ser Davos," she called above clangor, "come temper your hands." He bowed awkwardly, still unaccustomed to the honorific despite his years. "I've tempered fish more than steel, princess, but I'll lend what skill I have." Together they hefted glowing ingots into ice-cold troughs. Steam hissed, swirling around Davos's grizzled beard. For a moment he swore the vapor formed runes in the air, shapes like eyes and knives, but the vision shattered when Gendry thumped the anvil again. In the far north, beyond even the shadow of the wall, a silent glacier moved. An entire range of ice rumbling westward by inches, snow cascading in endless spindrift. Bran Stark watched from the eyes of a great gray direwolf atop the Frostfang peaks. Through summer senses he tasted the air. Cold, bitter, tinged with something acrid, like the stench left after lightning splits a tree. Beneath the glacier's rim swarmed pale things neither dead nor living. Glass-eyed wraiths unlike the wights he remembered. They drifted rather than walked, limbs thin as river reeds yet strong enough to carve footholds in stone. Above them hovered translucent creatures shaped like stingrays cut from moonlight, rippling through the breeze. Shadows of shadows. Bran's heart pounded in his still body beneath the great weirwood at Winterfell, miles south, but in the wolf a snarl trembled. He felt a presence reach toward him, cold fingers brushing his mind as though testing a lock. Summer tore from the vision with a growl, pelt bristling. Bran jolted awake beneath the red leaves of the heart tree, gasping. Arya knelt nearby, cleaning her slim Bravosi blade. "Dreaming again?" she asked. Bran nodded, voice hoarse. "Something comes, not the others we knew. New shapes." Arya frowned. "Then we learn their shape before they learn ours." She sheathed blade. "Tomorrow I ride south. Daenerys asked me to join her Dragonseed Guard. I can see if the Citadel knows these things." Bran's eyes closed, exhaustion heavy. "Be careful, little sister." "I am no little anything," Arya said with a half-smile. She squeezed his shoulder, rose, and strode away through drifting snow. At the wall, Jon Snow met with Bowen Marsh and Tormund Giantsbane to inspect the new beacon towers. Wooden frames coated in pitch rose every half-league along the King's Road, each crowned by steel baskets stuffed with pine tar and shards of glass designed to reflect the blaze. Jon's plan was simple. If ever darkness gathered again, fire would relay warning from the gift to King's Landing in hours, not weeks. Septon Celador jokingly called it the Knight's Lantern Chain, though no official edict named it yet. Dolorous Ed cracked jokes about crows carrying torches, but his eyes gleamed proud when Jon demonstrated the flint mechanism. "Just so long as no fool lights it because he spied his shadow," Ed muttered. Jon grinned, though weight pressed him. East of Skagos, fishing skiffs had vanished. Rumors spoke of glass eels rising like serpents, dragging men under. Soon he would ride to investigate. That evening, a raven from Old Town carried parchment stamped with 3 linked keys. Inside, Archmaester Marwyn warned that records from pre-Valyrian archives spoke of the Glass Doom, a cataclysmic convergence when the world's hot veins clashed with frozen darkness unleashed by sorcery. "Beware the storm of shards," the note ended, "for fire alone shall not suffice." Jon traced the words by lantern light, sitline thumb trembling. Daenerys Targaryen paced the length of a repaired gallery overlooking the Blackwater. She enjoyed the hush of pre-dawn, the orange glow that set narrow points of frost ablaze. Yet anxiety coiled, Drogon chafed in city confines, Rhaegal grew restless, and rumors of distant glass demons set her dreams on edge. She sensed a turning, past enemies subdued, new ones ascendant. Missandei entered with scrolls from Noth. The butterfly fever once contained now spread among sailors docking at Lys. Pale-skinned corsairs reported clouds of glittering shards falling with rain beyond summer sea. The world cracked open, it seemed, and things long buried crawled out. Daenerys sighed. I spent years fighting to free men from chains. Now I wonder if I merely broke the lock on a cage holding worse monsters. Missandei set scrolls aside and knelt. Freedom is fearsome, she said softly, but it is living. Chains feel safe only to those never shown a horizon. Dany lifted her friend's hand. Then we fly to that horizon. She glanced where Drogon perched atop the massive Rhaenys Hill Tower. She would depart at dusk, scout eastward beyond the stepstones for signs of shard storms and whatever birthed them. In the depths of the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister sat shackled before a council of septons and maesters convened for her trial. She wore a plain gray gown, her hair had grown ungainly. Yet her eyes retained a cold gleam. Tommen, flanked by Shireen and Maester Franken, awaited outside. The trial dragged, charges of kinslaying, treason, wildfire conspiracy. Qyburn testified under duress, though half his words gibbered of purer forms and crucibles of green. Cersei offered no defense, only laughed at mention of mercy. In the end, House Lannister's remaining vassals pleaded clemency that Tommen might keep some dignity. Stannis pronounced sentence. Cersei would spend her days in a silent sept deep in the Vale, isolated on windswept cliff, forbidden speech except for repentance. Cersei sneered, but the blow struck, silence was her doom. Outside the hall, Tommen wept in Shireen's arms. Shireen whispered, forgiveness begins where anger ends. Tommen wiped tears, nodded. Greyjoy ships, now under Asha's rule, sailed the coast to transport grain and timber. One foggy morning, a vessel named Maiden's Shout reported luminous forms trailing beneath hull, translucent fish with spines like spearheads. Sailors swore the creatures whispered through planks in languages all could understand but none repeated. When the ship docked at Gulltown, half the sailors shaved heads in penance, claiming they'd glimpsed the drowned god's eyes, though none had spoken his name. Asha wrote to council, if seas crawl with glass devils, Ironborn cannot rule waves alone. We demand knowledge. Scholars were dispatched. While counselors wrestled policy, Arya Stark galloped south with the Dragon Seed Guard, an eclectic company of former Dothraki, unsullied veterans, and Dornish outriders sworn to Daenerys. They cut across the Kingswood, training with live steel as they rode. At dusk they reached the ruins of Summerhall, charred timbers jutting from ash-like ribs. Arya dismounted, touched blackened stones. The air smelled still of tragedy decades cooled. She walked a spiral into scorched courtyard, kneeling by the cracked marble where Aerys's last folly ignited. There she found a loan book, its pages singed but legible, bound in green leather that shimmered faintly. The title, in Valyrian glyphs, read, Nissa's Weeping. She pocketed the volume, senses prickling. When she returned to camp, the night's fire cast red light on her somber face. She told no one of the find. At Storm's End, Stannis and Davos oversaw reconstruction. Mason crews carved sigils into keystones, the stag, the dragon, the wolf. Side by side, Victarion's axe was melted and recast into nails used to fix cedar shutters. Stannis insisted on such symbolism. Letters from Old Town arrived daily laden with warnings. Stannis read them each dawn, then trained with his captains until arms shook. Davos worried, the king drove himself harder than steel. One morning he spoke. You cannot fight shadows with a broken body. Stannis paused mid-swing. Then I cannot break, he answered. Yet cracks spidered around his eyes, fine as frost. Perhaps the gods heard Davos, for that afternoon a raven brought word. Princess Shireen's alloy held true, first blades tempered. Spirits lifted, new weapons against new threats. Stannis smiled, rare, and told Davos to fetch wine. Bran reached out through heart trees, searching for the glacier hoard. He glimpsed swirling shards dancing on gales along shivering sea's edge. They called in voices like bells rung underwater. He saw a great maw of ice open and swallow an island of stone. He felt summer recoil in distant body. In Old Town, Samwell cross-referenced records, the shard storm of pre-long night myth when pieces of the sky fell as crystal rain, scouring coasts. The text spoke of a harmonic blade forged of living fire joined to music of frozen winds, only its resonance shattered shard creatures. Sam's quill shook. Living fire, frozen wind, light steel? He penned Urgent Raven to Dragonstone. Gendry read it by forge light, brow furrowed. Shireen reread thrice. The pitch of hammer stroke, she mused, changes timbre of alloy. They experimented, striking ingots while a cellist from Bravos played long, resonant notes. Under certain frequencies, the metal glowed faint, humming. They hammered blades etched with grooves to channel vibrations. When complete, each sword thrummed if swung hard enough, releasing a pulse felt deep in bone. Gendry tested on an old obsidian idol, the blade sang, and idol fractured into dust. Eyes widened. Shireen inked a symbol on hilt. A circle of flame around a snowflake. Harmony, she whispered. Daenerys soared east of the stepstones upon Drogon, regal winging starboard. Below, turbulent sea rolled black. Above, sky bruised ominous purple. On the horizon, she spotted a storm, clouds glittering as though embedded with shards of ice. Lightning flashed inside, but silent. She guided Drogon closer. The air chilled, frost formed on saddle rings. Suddenly a spear of glass whistled by, slicing Drogon's flank. He roared, banking. In the swirling cloud shape shimmered, a ray-like creature formed of crystal, trailing tendrils of shimmering dust. Hundreds fluttered behind. Regal blasted green fire, it washed over the creature but dissipated in sparks. The creature turned, no eyes, only facets, and emitted a tone so high Dany's ears rang. Drogon faltered, wings trembling. Pain lanced through her skull. She withdrew, signaling retreat with whistle taught by unsullied drummers. They banked west, leaving Storm behind, but not before a dozen shards pocked Drogon's scales. Back in King's Landing, Daenerys landed shaky. Maesters inspected wounds. Shards embedded but melting slowly, emitting cold. They removed 3, placed them in lead box. Inside, shards vibrated gently. Her tale chilled counsel. Stannis clenched fists. Winter's spawn now float in sky, he muttered. Davos stared at shards. We need those singing blades. The decision came swift. An embassy of smiths, rangers, and maesters would sail up Blackwater, collect light steel from Dragonstone, then journey north to staging grounds at Moat Cailin, where Bran's ravens warned of first shard creature incursions. Jon Snow volunteered to lead. Arya insisted on joining. Before departure, Jon met Daenerys atop the ramparts. The shards shatter on dragonglass, he told her. But fire alone falters. Dany stroked Drogon's recovered scale. Then dragons will bear light steel riders. She turned to Jon. Ride with me north. Jon glanced at Ghost below, then back. When storms gather, yes. They clasped forearms. Wind gusted, carrying faint chime, the city's new bell installed to honor children fed that first free moon. It rang midday, calling small folk to markets. The sound heartened Jon. The fleet sailed, 10 dramans bearing grain and obsidian, 2 dragon-proud quinquiremes for speed. On board, smiths hammered practice notes on light steel rods, refining resonance. Samwell journeyed with them, carrying ancient tomes wrapped in oilskin. Arya kept watch at prow, scanning for crystal rays. Halfway to Dragonstone, a silver mist-enveloped fleet. At its heart drifted a shard ray the size of a galleon, silent. Glass tendrils brushed water, icing waves. The quinquireme dragon's kin collided with a tendril, timbers flash froze and shattered. Crew abandoned ship, screams echoed in fog. Arya sprang across deck, slashing at tendril, her Bravosi blade snapped, sheared clean. She cursed, grabbed light steel spear, thrust again. The spear sang, the tendril fractured like sugar glass. The creature emitted whine, retreated, mist swirling. Fleet resumed course under wary eyes. The lesson clear, only resonance. On Dragonstone's black shore, Shireen greeted fleet with crates of blades, staffs, arrowheads. Gendry stayed to forge more. Shireen insisted on sailing north herself, dogged by purpose. Davos argued but knew her resolve. She boarded flagship Dawn's calling. As fleet weighed anchor, Jon noted eerie quiet. Seabirds fled. At twilight, Summerhall's ruins gleamed on distant cliff, the scar of old prophecy. Samwell shared Shireen's cabin to pore over Nissa's weeping. Arya had sent copy. The text, in archaic Valyrian, described a heroine whose song calmed storms and shattered crystal giants. Music as weapon, Sam breathed. Shireen traced runes that matched grooves on blades. We must sing them, she said. Northward they sailed, past gull-haunted cliffs, past salt pans, into the bight where White Harbor's towers rose. Wyman Manderley awaited, throngs cheering Bread King for his grain shipments. He offered more casks. They spent 2 nights provisioning. At feast, Shireen played lute while blacksmiths tapped blades against table, subtle melody building. The hall's beams vibrated. Wyman's grandson, Ser Wendemer, asked Shireen to compose Anthem of Dawn for the new realm. She laughed shy. Yet that night on deck she hummed melody while tracing blade grooves. Jon listened, smile ghostly. At Moat Cailin, Bran, carried by Hodder's giant sun horde, greeted fleet. Winter winds whistled through broken towers, harmonizing with light steel sheets. Bran warned Glacier Horde advanced faster south of Skagos now, storms preceding. Council of War formed. Jon, Arya, Shireen, Samwell, Bran, via Weirwood carving, Lady Barbary Dustin representing Ryswells, Willa Manderly, Tormund for free folk. Plan. Lure Shard Horde across neck, bottleneck by marsh fires and harpooned nets of light steel wire while dragons strafe overhead. Resonance drums would sound from towers, striking dissonant chords to fracture rays. Smiths mounted gongs forged of alloy upon crenellations. Samwell tuned them by ear, he once sang in Old Town Choir. Children of the forest, those few remaining in deep Crannog, emerged, offering obsidian flute tones older than human memory. Mira Reed guided them, smile sad. Bran, through summer's eyes, wept unseen joy. Days later sky darkened, dawn swallowed by shimmering cloud. Shard rays descended, icy silver arcs blotting sun. Behind them marched glass whites, corpses sheathed in crystal layers. The Glacier Horde arrived. The Battle of the Neck began with song. Shireen, pale but steady, stood atop Moat's tallest tower, lute tuned to perfect fifth above the winds. She plucked strings. Gongs answered, deep as mountain hearts. Dragons roared overhead, their fire weaving between tones. Resonance rippled. Shard rays shrieked as notes pierced them. Tendrils shivered, shattered. Silver fragments rained like hail. But larger entities emerged, towering amalgams of shards fused around stolen bones, wielding limbs like scythes. Spears hurled by wildlings broke on them. Arya vaulted marsh hillocks, dual light steel daggers singing arcs, she severed joints, creatures collapsing. Jon fought side by side with Tormund atop makeshift palisade. Longclaw, now sharpened by alloy dust, rang clear each stroke, slicing through crystal ribs. But for every foe felled, too advanced. The marsh fires flickered under icy blasts, steam obscured lines. Then Bran acted. Warging through ravens, he guided flock of black wings swirling above battlefield. Each bird carried tiny light steel shard tied to claws. At Bran's silent command they dove, releasing shards like raining stars. When shards struck, they resonated with gongs, sending thrum that cracked larger beasts. Dany and Drogon descended in sweeping blaze, but she timed flame bursts to coincide with gongs, amplifying sound through heat, Sam's hypothesis realized. The air quivered, ice splintered in sheets. One giant crystal knight reared, wings of glass rising, but Regal's roar harmonized with Luke Cord, the giant exploded in prism shards. Amid chaos Shireen's fingers bled, strings biting flesh, yet